Everyone else ready?
Mhm.
Recording in progress.
All right, it is 6:30 p.m. on April 3rd, and I will call the Select Board meeting to order. As the first order of business, I will take any nominations for chair, being at your reorganizational meeting.
Make the motion to elect Andy Watts to be chair of the select board.
Ethan nominates Andy, seconded by Kendall. Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none, all in favor of Andy Watts as chair, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Andy, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right.
Congratulations.
That was quick. Okay, I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Tracy Delphia as vice chair of the Essex Town Select Board.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry. Any other nominations? That's what I'm supposed to ask. Sorry.
Oh, I forgot discussion. Sorry.
It's okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of electing, or is electing? Yeah, I guess it's electing Tracy to be vice chair. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Congratulations.
Likewise.
Now open the floor for nominations for clerk.
I nominate Ethan Lawrence to be clerk for the Essex Town Select Board.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Are there any other nominations?
I'll just speak up and say I am interested in serving as clerk.
I heard that too, so I'm going to nominate Kendall Chamberlain to be clerk of the Essex Select Board.
I second that one too.
Right. Thanks. So now we have
You legally can, yeah.
we have two nominations. Guess we vote the first one
I
first.
believe you're supposed to vote the first one first. Yeah.
Okay. So
Why wouldn't you do it? It's all one. It's all one.
Well, if you're okay with it, I'm just going to withdraw my second for Ethan.
Yeah. Can you do that? I'm good.
well,
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Then I'll withdraw
Kendall
my.
does a really
All
good
right,
job.
I'll withdraw my
I want to make
nomination.
a comment before we vote. Because
All right, I'll withdraw my nomination.
I am very limited on time, and respectfully so, I spend a lot of time being on board and understanding everything about the meeting. But Kendall does a really good job of reading through the minutes and understanding check warrants, and he really does a more thorough job. And I think that it would be a good service to our town to have Kendall Chamberlain as clerk of our select board.
okay. So procedurally, I have no idea what we should be doing. I think
Go ahead and vote on
the
it, because
nomination for
been
You
withdrawn.
can vote on me first, and
Ethan's
then we'll vote on.
been withdrawn.
That's what I heard.
Go ahead, and we will then vote for Kendall to be clerk for the select board for the coming year. All those in favor of Kendall, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, Kendall, thank you. You're our new select board clerk for the coming year. All right. So moving on to agenda additions or changes. Are there any from staff?
None from staff.
Any from board members?
Clarifying question.
Yep.
The minutes, if we need to, it was Don who voted against changing do we need to pull it?
I think if it's something minor, you can just handle it during
Okay.
consent, but other people might feel more comfortable pulling it out. So I think either way is fine.
Does anyone have any, I guess, burning desire to pull it out to change that? Because I noticed that too, that it was Don that voted against the agenda change on the last.
Right.
Yeah. So if everybody's okay with just handing that in as a clerical change, we can not adjust the agenda there. There is one adjustment I would like to propose, though, is that the CSWD expects to be here at 8 o'clock. And I don't know whether in the order of the agenda here, whether they will be, their timing will intersect with our timing. So I'd like to propose that we modify the agenda to move 6E to the point in time when either the appropriate representatives are here to speak to it. If
Is
they
there a reason they can't get here earlier?
They have other meetings. They're attending, I think, 2 or 3 different board meetings tonight
Yeah, they have
in
to,
Chittenden County.
they have to attend all Chittenden County select board meetings. Yeah.
So should we move them to rearrange and move
We
them
can
to J?
either make it so, what I'm proposing is that we make it so it floats to a point where when we finish one agenda item, if they're here, we can go to them
before or to
before the, yeah. If we get to the end of the meeting and they're not here, then we may need to reschedule
Right.
if they're not here. Right.
I'm okay with that. I just don't want to make it through everything and then it's, I don't know what time it would be, but
Right.
in that scenario.
So I make the motion that we move business item 6E to float to the appropriate time or to at the time when the appropriate representatives are here to speak to that item. And if they aren't here before we finish the agenda, then they'll be deferred to another meeting.
Second.
Hey, Tracy, thank you for the second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. We'll pay attention to when we get
Mr.
here.
Chairman, can I just, Greg, do you want to take the square thing out of the okay on there?
Oh, shit. Yep.
I know it's on both screens, and I know people watching can.
Okay, so we've updated the agenda. Next thing on the agenda is public to be heard. This is a time for attendees of the meeting to speak to items that are not on the agenda, or to speak to town business items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak during public to be heard, you can either raise your hand in the Zoom meeting tool by moving your cursor down to the bottom of your screen and clicking on the reactions button that comes up. There'll be an opportunity in there to raise your hand, or you can raise your hand in the room. So is there anyone who'd like to speak during public to be heard? I see one online hand. I don't see any in the room. So Margaret, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, I will be very brief, but I just wanted to say thank you for being accessible and allowing people to speak on your meeting. I had a really unpleasant experience at the school board meeting last week, and I won't take your time detailing it, but I'll send an email. So I just wanted to say thank you.
All right. Thank you, Margaret, for your comments. Anyone else like to speak during public to be heard? Okay, it looks like not. So let's move on to our first business item, which is interviews and possible appointments to volunteers to serve on the Planning Commission. We have 3 candidates. I believe they're all here in the room. We have Georgia Levine, Daniel Parkins, and Michael Peterson. We'll ask you to come up one at a time and ask you questions. And what we are interviewing for is there was a resignation on the Planning Commission, so there's that one seat that is currently open. We will, after interviewing you, we typically don't have a discussion when there's multiple candidates in front of the candidates, so we'll have executive session discussion later. And then if there's a decision is made, you'll be notified by town staff likely tomorrow.
Mhm.
So we will go in the order that you're on the agenda. So Georgia, come on up.
Here.
Whichever one, and don't move the microphone.
I've watched this a lot, but I've never been here. I'm very nervous.
Yeah, so Georgia, thank you for stepping forward. We'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, share why you'd like to be on the Planning Commission, any other information you think the select board might be helpful for the select board to understand your
Okay.
situation.
Sounds good. So my name is Georgia. I've lived in Essex for about 9 years, and I worked in Essex before that. Can everybody hear me okay? Am I speaking into this well? I've been thinking for a while about being on a commission or a committee and wanting to serve the town. I work at elections with Andy and Don, and I love doing that, but that's only a couple times a year. So I thought it'd be fun to do something else. The reason I chose planning, I thought planning would be great, was I went to one of the public meetings about the 2026 town plan, and I was a little surprised that I was the youngest person in the room, and I thought I had a perspective maybe that would be useful to the planning commission, just being younger. I got young kids. I probably would not have been able to afford my house in Essex had I been buying it in 2023. And I just thought that perspective could be really useful. I also, I read the 2016 town plan, and I thought it was really fascinating. And I also like that there are a lot of maps, very much like maps. And there were like floodplain maps and geological maps and zoning maps. And I wish I could see them a little better. The PDFs were a little bit fuzzy, but if I had my way, my house would be plastered with maps. I just really like them. So felt like this would be a good fit. So.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members? Don, go ahead.
I have two. What do you picture a future Essex looking like?
So that is the reason I was excited about the prospect of applying to be on the planning commission. I know they're not going to be doing development review in 18 months or so. It's going to be all planning. And I think it's really exciting to think about the future. I love to walk. I love to hike. I love, my family loves to fish. And I know Andy has talked about a canoe access, and I was so excited when I heard about that. I would picture a vibrant town center, and then a lot of open space and natural preserved land out throughout the rest of the town and the north of the town, much like it is now. I still have to read all of the ETC next plan, but I know there's plans in the works for building out the town center, and I think that's really exciting. The stuff that's going on in the Essex experience, I think, is cool. Definitely more paths, bike paths, walking paths. I think walkability is really, really, really important. Also, I would love to see more housing, more affordable housing, especially in the town center and the sewer core. It's really tough for businesses. You cannot find people to work, and a big part of that is housing. Yeah, I mean, that's a state issue, that's a countrywide issue, but we can deal with it here in town too.
Thank you. And my second question is, if you're in the minority in making a decision, how would you handle it?
Well, I think you need to speak your mind, and you need to be clear about what you believe, but also part of being on a committee or a commission or a board is you need to go with what the majority feels. I mean, I didn't support separation, but we're, a new town now, and I feel like I'm excited to be part of a new town. Like, you kind of accept the way things go, and then you try to get behind it and do the best you can, and that's how life goes.
Thank you, Georgia.
You're welcome.
Kendall, go ahead.
In your perusal of the current town plan, did anything strike you as maybe obsolete or that you could upgrade in a short period of time with the new town plan?
So sure. Well, there was a lot about prospective merger in the old town plan, which obviously that is all obsolete. Like there's a lot has changed in the past 10 years. There was a lot of talk about, there was definitely talk about planning for renewable energy. Like if you're citing, and I actually need to look into this more because maybe the town has done more work since then, but sort of planning for a future. What if somebody wants to put in a big like solar array somewhere, like the planning for what would happen then. What if people wanted to put windmills up on ridge lines, and I don't know, maybe there's been more work done on that in the past 10 years, but that was definitely something where you can see that coming down the road and sort of the debates around that. And it seems like having a plan in place would be very important. So those two things were probably what jumped out at me the most.
Thank you.
Ethan?
Excuse me. I was curious about your planning vision for as far as how you'd like to see the town built, specifically towards housing. And in comparison to, our neighbors, and how would you see that being developed?
Well, no, that's a good question. Something I learned while reading the plan was that there's actually a number, and I wish I could think of the acronym. The town has sort of planned for how many people can be sort of allowed to move in the year. I can't think of it used to be how many new houses or how many new dwellings, but now there's a number attached to how many bedrooms in each house. And so that's actually kind of in place. It's 200 and something, 213. And I think the number, they came across that number, or they worked out that number with the school district, because you can only, the school can only get so many new students in every year. If there was a huge influx of new students, I think it would overwhelm the school district. So that was something I didn't know. But so I would, I think that number seemed like a reasonable number for growth for the town. And obviously the goal is to get that growth in the town center where the sewer court is. So that, yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I would like to see housing built there, but obviously in a smart way, and not, no slumlords, no things like that. But yeah.
Tracy.
So, hi, Georgia. So understanding that we do have a charter change at the legislature to move to a DRB model.
Yep.
Until that happens, the Planning Commission does fulfill that role.
Yes.
So how would you handle a situation where you are opposed to an application in front of you? However, how would you handle a situation where you're personally opposed to an application that's in front of the commission?
It's a tough question. So I've watched a couple meetings, and I've only watched, I think, one meeting where they were dealing with an application, and it seemed like that the planning commission, it seems like to me, I understood there to be a lot of institutional knowledge in that commission, a lot of people who really knew what they're talking about. And I've read through the subdivision regulations and the zoning regulations, and there's a lot of information in there. There is very dry reading, and it was hard for me to get through. So I'm trying to imagine an instance where I didn't agree with something, and I don't know. That's a tough question. I feel like I would try to work with the other people on the commission, listen to their points of view, and obviously give my opinion. But if I was in the minority, be it. From what I understand, there is a lot of knowledge on that commission. There's a lot of people who know really what they're talking about, and I do respect their opinions. So that helps always.
I do have one other question, if I may.
Go ahead. Yes.
How would you handle a situation where, and I know that all of these are hypothetical, right? Where you have a request from the development community and you have a competing interest brought forward from residents? What would your personal approach to that situation be?
Well, my personal approach would be definitely to listen to the residents. And that was one of the things that drew me to this particular position, because I felt like, at least with the plan side of it, there was a lot of consideration for input from residents, like working with the other committees, the other, the people in town. There seemed like there was a lot of a strong desire to really figure out what the vision of the community was and put that into place. So I feel like that's really, really important. But, I think when you make decisions, you would consider what the residents say, you would consider what the developer says. I don't really think, I don't know how to put this. What the developer thinks, I think you need to take with a grain of salt, obviously. I mean, but yeah, and then just use your best judgment. Consider the other people on the board, and I wouldn't I don't think anyone would blindly say I want more housing, so I'm just going to side with the developer every time. Like, that's not, you definitely have to take every single instance and look at it on its own.
Thanks, Tracy. The statute allows the planning commission to have their own conflict of interest policy. Sounds like you've read a bunch of documents. Have you read the planning commissions? You have not.
No.
Okay. So I guess in a case where you might have a personal interest in a development project that's coming forward, I guess how would you handle that? Or
Oh, well, I don't know. I would have to see what the policy said. What kind of personal interest?
well, generally, a conflict of interest is something that if you have a financial or personal gain from it,
I can't see a situation where that would occur. Like, I don't know any developers. But I mean, if that happened, I would assume the policy would say you can recuse yourself. Is that what the policy says? I mean,
It's-
that would be what would make sense to me.
Yeah,
You know, if you have that.
Yeah, the select board's policy is right. You recuse yourself,
Yeah,
you actually
right.
remove yourself from the room,
Yes.
so you don't even participate in the
Yeah.
conversation. So,
Yeah.
but I
had.
personally, I haven't read the planning commission's ones.
Yeah, no, I haven't either. I would assume that they would have such a policy, and that would make sense to me. That would be what you would do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Other question is, do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't think I do. I watched the meeting where you guys decided that it would be the plan would be 18 months to switch to the DRB model. Is that still the plan? I mean, that was.
That's the way that's the wording of what was voted. We're still waiting for the legislature to act.
Okay.
And the governor to sign. So, I assume they won't change that date on us. So yeah, that's what we're working toward.
To clarify, instead of 18 months, we did go with January 1 of 2025.
Okay.
So it's a little more than 18 months, right? But the way I'm reading the statute, we may need to get a legal opinion on this, is that even though we changed the mission of the planning commission, all seated planning commissioners remain on the planning commission. Changing the mission doesn't invalidate anybody's seats. So
Right. It would just be plan. Right. Which is what I would be more interested in, to be perfectly honest.
okay.
But
All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda here, Daniel Parkins. Come on up. Hey, Daniel, thank you for stepping forward. Again, it's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself and share any information that you think might be helpful for the select board to make a decision.
Wonderful. Thank you. I am honored to be able to come before the select board again. Last time we met, I was interviewing for a position on the Essex Energy Committee. That experience has been a great honor for me and very valuable in terms of my participation in the community. I hope to continue that participation by joining the Planning Commission as well, so that I can better coordinate between opportunities within those committees and departments within this town government. I think that on the whole, I have a lot of experience and education that I can bring to the Planning Commission. I've been working in rural economic development for over 5 years. I have a master's degree in sustainable development and peace building, and I am actively engaged in both political, social, and business opportunities throughout the state, with folks in Burlington as well as Montpelier, Bradford, down in Brattleboro, all of which are coalescing in a variety of different ways to try and facilitate better growth in the state of Vermont, which I am very keen to support.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Same too. What do you picture future Essex looking like?
The future Essex that I see or have a vision of, and it's something that I have learned to understand better and share with colleagues and other folks that I work with, is a clean, workable, walkable economy that can serve as a rural leader for the communities in the surrounding area. I see Essex as something of a beachhead. It's kind of at the frontier or the cusp of what is urban development and the other rural communities further outside from the Chittenden County area. And I think that makes Essex very well positioned to stand up and demonstrate what rural communities can really do. And I see that happening through a variety of different approaches, one of which would be to really prioritize renewable energy and the type of development that communities are looking for to build a brighter future for our children.
And my second question is, if you're in the minority and making a decision, how do you handle that?
I'll answer it in the same way I did last time. I approached this through a process of dialogue. I was trained as a peace builder. Dialogue is an approach to seek understanding, and that is my modus operandi in most situations, even when I'm in the majority. My objective is always to try and seek understanding and find paths forward that create mutual benefit for everyone involved. That's the way I handle that.
Thank you.
Kendall, go ahead.
I am curious if you've had a chance to look at the current town plan, if you have any ideas how you might improve the new town plan as it goes forward.
Yeah, I have had some opportunity to review the town plan as I've looked at certain grant opportunities for different parties in the town and tried to help facilitate that development. I think that the new development opportunities around the town center are really exciting, and I would like to be involved in progressing those and making them more in line with what a lot of community members, I believe, would like to see. One thing in the town plan or at least in the town that I would like to see happen sooner than later is to facilitate an official town designation within the state of Vermont, so that we can have access to greater opportunities, not just grant opportunities, but other opportunities that would allow our town to really move forward at a speed that I think is necessary for us to transition away from the city of Essex Junction.
Thank you.
I have, I guess it's one question that has three questions inside of it. But my first question is about the old town plan and how I was interested in a lot of your writing and your application, and I wanted to know how you felt that the land was being used or slated to be used for the current town plan as they're writing it, and within that, I wanted to have you touch on renewable energy, which sources you think would be best and where you believe that they would fit.
Yeah, if I'm hearing the question correctly, you're wanting me to kind of give a bit of a comparative analysis between the old town plan and the new town plan direction.
Yeah, and just where, I heard you say a lot about the renewable energy,
Yeah.
what sources and where do you think that we could improve?
Sure,
and where
sure.
could we put them?
I can try and answer both of
Yeah,
those things.
sorry, so
I don't have as much. I haven't looked at the old town plan as much. I moved into this space post separation, and so I didn't see much point or reason to read through those documents unless there was a reason for some kind of reunification. But based on what I've heard throughout the town, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I can't really speak to that old plan. What I can speak to is that, if the town of Essex is going to stand on its own, there needs to be a significant amount of work in terms of planning and development to make sure that we can facilitate the type of growth we need to raise the budget and have greater capacity to meet the needs of citizens so that we don't have such a strenuous tax burden on residents in the community. That's one thing that I think is a critical, pivotal point that needs to be addressed sooner than later. And I know that the select board is working towards that, and I want to be a part of those efforts. To segue into renewable energy, I think renewable energy is one of the ways that we can do that. Like I said, I have a lot of experience in rural economic development. I think that renewable energy and the new technologies and workforce opportunities that come with renewable energy is going to be a booming economy for many decades to come. I see the transition away from fossil fuels as something that is accelerating, not slowing down. And I think that it would be prudent for the town of Essex to participate in those types of activities as much as possible. I've seen other communities in different states do just this and have been seeing great benefits, both financially and through community well-being as a result of that. So specifically in terms of the types of energy that I think would be most valuable, I know that solar is in many ways kind of the preferred energy, simply because it doesn't have the noise pollution that wind does. And I think that the general consensus on nuclear right now is very much in the negative for a lot of people in Vermont. I have my own ideas about how that could be changing in the future, but that's dependent on a lot of technological advancements. But I think that between some combination of solar, wind, and geothermal, we could create a much more resilient, energy independent, and vibrant community that would actually see dividends in terms of wealth creation and opportunity to advance. Wind is something we would have to be, careful with in terms of where that is developed, connected to residential areas, right? But geothermal, I think, is a really critical aspect that could really advance the capacity of the community and our opportunity to move away from gas as a primary source of heating for fuel.
Awesome. And I just have one last question. I wanted to know, because I tried to Google it and there was a million different interpretations, but I wanted to know what it meant to you, rural economic ecosystem building.
This is actually what brought me to Vermont. I worked with the Center on Rural Innovation. Matt Dunn is the executive director of that nonprofit. And that's their whole shtick. Their whole thing is to build rural economic ecosystem building ecosystems. Now, a really simple way to describe an ecosystem in this context would be to look at, when you put a bag of popcorn into the microwave and you can just push that popcorn button, there's a relationship between the microwave industry and the popcorn industry that allows that to happen, right? And they both benefit from that. There's a mutual benefit involved with making that convenient for consumers. Consumers buy the microwave bags that do that, and they like the microwaves that allow them to just push the one button. That's a type of business ecosystem that's vertically integrated. There are many different ways that you can build ecosystems, and it's primarily based on creating interdependent relationships between business organizations across sectors with nonprofits and local government to facilitate collaboration and cooperative engagements through collective impact. I just used a string of jargony words that probably add to the confusion a little bit, and I apologize, but in short, it allows people to come together and work together to create more opportunity and to grow our economy. That makes sense.
Good enough. Thank you.
Daniel. So again, understanding that the Planning Commission will take on development review for at least the next 18 months, pending a decision by the legislature. If an application were in front of you as a planning commissioner that you personally disagreed with, what would you rely on to guide your decision making?
In the service of the town, I would always be operating under the assumption that I'm trying to do what's best for the whole community. So my personal vested interest is not a part of that equation. I recognize that bias is a part of who we are as human beings, so I can't say that I would never be personally invested in something, but I think my investment overall, the calling that I have in community is to serve the community. And so my efforts would be to weigh the benefits for the whole community and to identify if there are any impacts that the community should be aware of before we pass such a motion. That makes sense.
Yep. And the second one was if something were in front of you where there was a situation where a developer made a request and the public had given input that are in opposition to one another, what would your approach be?
I think that this is a really critical point to address, so I appreciate that question. I see a whole lot of parties in conflict in Vermont right now for a variety of reasons. Some of the larger bills in circulation that are hot topics are like Act 250 and S100, and the kind of divisive grounds that people stand on there. And again, my first reaction is to look at what is really beneficial for the whole community, understand what's happening at a systemic level, and understand that first. And then, I would want to be proposing opportunities for mediation, opportunities for these conflict parties to find ways to understand each other better. Because I think that quite a lot of the divisiveness comes from misunderstanding and from an inability to feel like one has been heard. Right. And so I would also be trying to look at proposing like impact assessments or doing a cost benefit analysis in order to identify exactly where this particular issue falls in regards to the community's well-being.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tracy. So Dan, well, my wife and I, last time we were looking for shopping for a microwave, one of her specific requirements was that it not have a chicken nugget button.
That is oddly specific.
It is very, very hard to find one that does
To
not
find one that
does
doesn't
not
have
a
one,
chicken
yeah.
nugget button. Yeah. So, my question to you is: you have a lot of connections around the state based on what you've said about what the work that you do, and I guess I'm asking whether you think that may cause a problem with regard to conflict of interest for you.
I think that the idea of conflict of interest is definitely something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I do run my own business. It is centered on community building and economic development and business development. I believe the way that I see my participation here in Essex is a matter of service. I am offering my skills as a volunteer in the town to see Essex improve and move forward. I do not see myself taking on financial opportunities that are directly connected to my work on either the Essex Energy Committee or on the Planning Commission. And if there is a point where there is business opportunities that I'm engaged in that are connected to the things at hand, I would, of course, recuse myself from that specific line item that is being discussed. My objective is to never mix those two bags, and I hope to be providing service here in Essex while operating more of my business opportunities outside of Essex.
And then last question: do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I'm still very new to the way that the government operates here in the town of Essex, and I'm learning every day. I've learned a little bit about how the Essex Energy Committee is connected with the Select Board, and I'm curious how you guys see the Planning Commission cooperating with not just the Select Board, but other committees as well. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on what that looks like for you guys and how you see that process playing out?
So I know that as the Planning Commission is working toward a new town plan, per our requirements from statute, they are reaching out to many of the other committees, Conservation and Trails, Energy Committee, I think is involved as well, to collaborate in putting that whole piece of work together. With regard to how the planning commission interacts with the select board, we kind of stay at an arm's length a lot of the time. We are having a joint meeting with them later this month to have it's kind of an educational session from the regional planning commission for all of us to understand how planning is supposed to work and I don't know. I know there's been a lot of we've been getting a lot of comments from the public about how development is proceeding, and I think we all need to understand how the two groups should be interacting and to what degree. I don't know, is there anything more that
You talked last year when we did the strategic planning and work session for the select board. You talked about revamping the board and committee process and those relationships. Last year, in the past year, we kind of took more of an approach of how to appoint people, how to reappoint people to those boards and committees. Rolling out the stipend program. Wouldn't surprise me in next month when we meet if that's still a topic of conversation, how to go about that. But I can't totally predict the future, what you're going to say. As far as the planning commission and other committees, Andy mentioned it well with the town plan process and the excuse me, collaboration that they're doing with all the other boards and committees there. When it comes to development review, the conservation and trails committee sees all development before it goes to the planning commissions. They have an opportunity to weigh in on paths, sidewalks, environmental impact, stuff like that. And then, a lot of it depends on the project or the issue or the town plan as far as the energy committee or some of the other committees that we have out there.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. I fully understand that there's kind of a growing work in progress as the town tries to recenter itself. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our final candidate for the evening, Michael Peterson. Come on up. Again, it's an opportunity to introduce yourself and share anything that you think
Hello, my name is Michael Peterson. I am 55 years old. I reside at 77 Saxon Hill Road, and I've become interested in serving the town of Essex out of a situation that has arisen that you are aware of in my neighborhood, and I would like to try and not have that happen to somebody else. Try and keep a balance between industrial development and residential development, and strike a balance of that in the town of Essex. To compromise, to figure things out, make it work for everybody. See that make the town work, make it work for everybody, the businesses, the residents, everybody. Not just one group.
Okay, thank you. Don, you want to start again?
Yep. What do you picture a future Essex looking like?
I picture the future of Essex being a wonderful place to live in harmony with nature. It's a beautiful area, mountains in the background. Keeping our developments in harmony with nature and the aesthetics of Vermont. And a balance between industry, residents, infrastructure. I hear a lot about a development, but I don't hear a lot about infrastructure. I don't hear a lot about the roads. I pull out the end of my road some mornings and it looks like all of Vermont's going down Route 15. And those are things I never hear about, the infrastructure. I hear, we need this, we need that, but we also need to think about our roads. How are people getting around? All these businesses coming in. How does all that traffic affect everybody? There's a lot more to, there's a lot of people that are affected by things that I think they don't say anything. And I want to be a voice for those people. There's a lot out there that happens that people don't feel they're part of. And I would like to try and, alleviate some of that. But I moved here almost 5 years ago, and I don't regret a moment, even with what's gone on in my neighborhood. Beautiful. And I want to try and, make it a better place.
And my second question is, if you're in the minority and making a decision, how do you handle it?
Compromise. How anything ever gets done is through compromise. If you can't compromise, nothing positive is ever going to happen. So that's the way I look at things. I try to always see both sides, not just my side. Because, does that really matter at the end of the day? No, what matters is everybody's opinion and coming up with what's best for the community. It's not really what's best for me. That's not really why I'm doing this.
Thank you.
Kendall, go ahead.
I am curious, with our current town plan that's being revised, there is a lot to do with the previous town and village together. Do you see any opportunity in the new town plan for significant improvements?
There's, and there's so much land, so much possibility everywhere. I look at these buildings that aren't being used. Why don't we offer incentives for people to move into these buildings, tax breaks? If there's something not being used and it's derelict, somebody wants to do something with it, let's give them a tax break, get them in, get it cleaned up. There's a lot that can be cleaned up and used, and not woods being torn down, being clear cut for buildings. I think there's an avenue where I think it can make a lot of people happy with conversation about the way it is. That's, I think the plan is something that's going to evolve. This is all new to everybody. Essex just split. I've never been down the road of a town splitting before, so I don't know what to expect. I guess it's really up to what do the residents see? What do the residents of Essex, now the town, see the future? Not so much what I see the future. I would like to paint everything in, daisies and, all of that, but that's not reality. That's kind of how it is in my eyes.
Thank you.
Ethan.
I don't know how much you looked through the old town plan compared.
I did not, because I was kind of under the assumption that the new town plan is coming. It's all, kind of water under the bridge to me at this point.
Are you familiar with the zoning sections throughout town as far as what they're designated and where they are?
I am not fully aware of that yet.
Okay, I'll ask you a different question. What is your vision for development in the town of Essex, and where lies your boundaries between rural and development?
Again, that's a compromise. That's like what is land use? What is is land, can they build on it? If it is deemed, for that use, then it should be used for that. There's land use, there's variance, there's a whole lot of things that go into development of a community. You look at a farmer's field, well, it's beautiful, but is it developable? Is there wetlands going through it? Is there this, is there that? There's a lot that goes into what goes into building a community. And again, it's a balance between, industry, the residents, the businesses, everybody has to get along. And that's, it's still the way I feel. I feel that everything is a compromise. And if everybody can put their minds together and their 2 cents in, then compromise can happen and things can happen nicely. And not have people feel like they're not heard, not have resentment. That's kind of how I've always worked. So,
Thank you.
So understanding that the planning commission will be handling development reviews for at least 18 months, how would you handle a situation where you are personally opposed to an application, and what would you rely on to guide your decision making?
Again, a compromise. I try not to be dead set where I can't see positives in other things. I'm always open to suggestions, and things can be made better. Maybe somebody comes to me with an idea and I'm like, wow, that is a better idea. I'm never opposed to saying that. I've been a boat mechanic my whole life. I've had other people come along and show me something. I'm like, wow, I didn't know about that. That's awesome. So now I use that. I'm not closed-minded. I'm open-minded. I like to see things evolve and get better.
Did you have another?
I do. I think I already know the answer, but I'll ask anyway.
Okay.
If there is a situation where a developer's request and public input are in opposition to one another, how would you handle the situation?
Again, would be you listen to both sides. That's all. That's all you can do is listen to both sides and come up with what is deemed fair. That's all you can really do.
Thank you.
You know, what is positive and what is fair. Do they get what they want? You know, everybody's got to give and take. If you don't, nothing is going to.
Right. Thanks, Tracy. You heard me ask the question about conflict of interest. Do you feel that?
I would just recuse myself. You know, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's the way it works.
Yep. Right. Did you have any questions for us?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to come and speak.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Georgia. Thank you, Daniel. Again, we will go into executive session later and have a discussion. If we come to a decision, we'll let you know. I also want to let you know that there are 3 additional seats that will be interviewed for later in the year, or beginning June or July 1st. So if you're not selected this round, you may be still in consideration for those if you're interested in doing so. So just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. So all right, thank you very much. Free to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like, or find your way out. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. 6B, consider approval of new rules of procedure for vicious or potentially vicious dog hearings.
We have Rick Gary here to speak to that.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I apologize for not being present this evening.
Hey, Rick. See ya.
Good to see you all. You should have in your packet a proposal for some guidelines, rules of procedure for vicious dog hearings. As you all know, you recently approved the update of the animal ordinance, which included potentially vicious dogs as part of hearings. We anticipate that we will have more complaints. And as you all know, as the select board, you are the hearing authorities and the decision makers on those hearings. As part of that process, we learned that VLCT a little over a year ago, when there were more and more of these hearings happening around the state, provided some guidelines to towns that we had not taken advantage of yet. And that's where the basis of these rules come from. So this is a draft with most of the stuff that comes from VLCT. The purpose of this is kind of multi-fold. One of them is to provide some guidelines for the folks that are involved in the hearings, whether it's the dog owner or whether it's a victim of a bite, so that they know what they're allowed to do and what the hearing is all about. A lot of times we get questions and people are unsure about what is going to happen. This is to provide some guidance and some understanding. The other thing that we've seen from some folks that maybe if they've been there for a little while is, unfortunately, these hearings are often contentious because of the subject matter, and we're dealing with people's pets, which are part of their families. And so sometimes it's a little tough. We've had some hearings both in the town and recently in the city that have extended for quite a period of time. Part of this procedure would actually restrict testimony to direct evidence and just a few character witness folks that would want to testify on behalf of that. And the information would be provided to the select board ahead of time, and then they could call witnesses at the hearing. Again, the purpose of this is not to restrict the evidence that can be provided, but it is to just limit multiple folks coming in and wanting to testify that doesn't have direct evidence related to the case. This procedure would provide the scope for the board to restrict testimony if it wasn't germane. The other thing it does is this would also allow, which we have not done in the past, the opportunity for the select board to deliberate in private if it feels that it needs the ability to do that, whether it's reviewing the testimony or the evidence, reviewing case law, if we need to speak to some subject matter experts, or the animal control officer, we could provide more information for the select board to deliberate. And this procedure also allows for decision not having to be made immediately that night of the hearing. This makes a recommendation for the board to be able to deliberate and then provide a finding back to the dog owner and the victim within 30 days. We believe that this will provide a procedure that will work best for the community, will help us deal more efficiently with what I suspect are going to be more hearings that you're going to have to deal with. And I think it gives the select board the flexibility and what they need to be in order to be able to determine fact and come to some conclusions that are reasonable, and also again provides the people that are involved in the hearing some guidelines for what to understand. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rick. Any questions from board members? Tracy?
Just one question under the procedure. First major paragraph, last sentence. The chair or vice chair rules on all questions of order and procedure. Should that be the presiding member rule
Yeah.
on all questions?
Yes.
Just thinking of tonight, Andy and I disagreed, and it says the chair or vice chair. Who gets to win?
Yeah, I would agree. It probably should be the presiding member, whoever that person is at that time.
It does clarify if both the chair and vice chair are absent, a member will be selected to chair the meeting. So I don't know if that would qualify under the chair of the hearing, or I don't know if that's still gray.
Yeah, I think it's the word use of the word or there. That's the question. Because although there's only one person presiding, it's explicit who that is. It's known who that is. I think it takes the or question out, right?
Well, I know, having sat through dog hearings before, I like what this says, and I like the procedure much better than the way we've had to do it in the past.
Yeah.
So I had a question, and maybe I missed part of the information that might have touched on it, but and this is just a theoretical question, but if somebody per se hired a lawyer or an attorney, is there anything in here that says that they could or could not speak at the town meeting? Like if there was a legal case beyond the measures of the public hearing at the town, like how would we handle that? Let's say that they were going after reformation from the incident.
That would go through the court system, not through us.
Right, but
Yeah.
how would we
I think
handle that if their representation came to the hearing?
I believe this allows the flexibility for if someone is represented by an attorney, that the attorney could provide, because they're providing the direct evidence, they would be allowed to testify. The board would allow that. Again, as Andy indicated, the hearing is not in relation to, this is just a hearing for determination on what happens to the dog. There is an appeal process that is part of the Vermont statutes on if they didn't agree with the decision that the board made. They then would appeal to the county court, who then it would be heard in front of a judge. And again, their attorney could represent them at that hearing.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure, and like I said, I might have not read it and understood, the wording in here, but I just didn't know if they would be allowed to speak at this hearing.
Yep.
As representation.
Yep. To my understanding, anybody that has the dog owner, the victim of a bite, anyone that has direct evidence, and or a limited number of character witnesses. And I guess, and we've seen this at a couple of hearings, the problem that happens is people will come in and everybody that's ever known the dog wants to give a character witness to the dog, that we go on for 2 hours about how good the dog is or how bad the dog is. And the fact of the matter is once we get 2 or 3 of those character witnesses, we're not adding any new evidence. So it's to try to keep the hearing germane to the evidence that's being provided. If there's new evidence, the board has the ability to allow it, but it also has the ability to restrict it. This does not change anything in the state statute in reference to hearings, requesting hearings, or the appeal process. This is simply a procedure about how the hearings will run, and a little bit of change in the procedure about allowing discretion for private deliberation for the board, and allowing the board also to delay and not having to come up with a decision immediately that evening of the hearing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? In that same paragraph that Tracy was referring to, the first sentence, it says the town of Essex Select Board, or the chair's absence, the vice chair. I think it should say the town of Essex Select Board chair, or in the chair's absence. I think there's a word missing there.
Okay.
The other things that I totally appreciate this process, and I'm pretty happy with it myself. I was interviewed by some Cub Scouts a couple weeks ago. They asked me what the hardest thing about being on the select board was, and I told them it was dog bite hearings. They're by far the hardest thing to get through, and especially when the ones that I've participated in, we deliberated in front of the dog owner and the victims. We didn't go into executive session. We just did right there in open meeting, and it was pretty
That was
painful
hard.
to go through the whole thing. So thank you for this.
Absolutely.
More board comments. I'll open up questions to.
Well,
Did you want to say something, Kendall?
I'm just curious because they are so contentious. It says, if needed, an Essex police staff member. Might be good to always have police staff member involved because of all the potentials for dog hearings like that.
History has been that we've always had, somebody's always been involved
always
largely
come in
to
with-
answer questions, and actually that they're there to present evidence, to present, or, they're, it's
So
Good.
if I may, I believe what this does do is what has happened in the past is we have come, and I've been a lucky person to be able to do it for the last 5 years. We have come and kind of run that portion of the hearing because it is officially a quasi judicial process. However, this procedure does allow the board or the presiding person to run the process if they so choose. And I feel confident in if the board still felt that they wanted or needed the presence of an officer, I'm confident that the chief would totally support whatever the chair or whatever the board felt that they needed there. We are always there, and yes, these quite often are contentious, and if you need someone there, we will be there.
any other board comments or questions?
No, so at this time, do you need a motion to accept this?
No, I'm going to go to public comment
Okay.
first. I see a hand in the room. Somebody scratching their head.Maybe not. Okay.
Stretching. They're stretching.
All right. Any comments from the public or questions? Proposed procedure. Don't see any hands up online. So is this is not a policy? Can we adopt this in this, or what's the procedure here? What do we recommend?
I think you can adopt it tonight. Typically it's your policies for your rules and regs, that you introduce them at a first meeting, you accept them, and then you adopt them theoretically at the next meeting. This is more of a rules of procedure. You could adopt it tonight if you want to take the cautious approach and accept it tonight and adopt it on consent agenda at your next meeting. I think that's fine too, but I'll look to Rick to see if there's any pressing need to have it done tonight.
No, sir.
So I make the motion that the Essex Town Select Board adopt the rules of procedure for vicious and potentially vicious dog hearings.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
For clarification, does that include the modifications we mentioned this
With the
evening?
corrections made.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? To be clear, this is a motion to adopt, so we won't bring it back. This is a final approval of it. So all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thanks so much, Rick. And
Thank you so much.
I won't say I'm looking forward to using it.
I know. Good night.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. Consider approval of fire department request for use of capital funds to purchase electrocardiograph unit.
Good evening.
Got the whole crew tonight.
So I do want to introduce to you three more of your teammates tonight. On my far right, Miss Rachel Yando. She's a second-generation firefighter. Tom Yando with the MAC that you all know. Captain John Willett, who is also a career firefighter in Williston and one of our daytime firefighters. Rachel also is and firefighter EMT Dan Rosen, who is a career Vermont Air National Guard firefighter. So the three of them are the driving force of the packet of information and the wealth of knowledge that you have before you tonight. I helped put some of this together, but it's really their hard work that has brought this before you tonight. We have tried unsuccessfully for a few years to apply for grant funding for one of these machines, and that obviously didn't come through. We were not selected to receive the grant. And a combination of recent EMS calls where one could have been used, as well as recent changes in the EMS protocols of what they're allowed to do and what they should be doing when they're on scene and providing patient care. The time is right now for us to expend the funds out of our capital equipment budget to get one of these machines in our service. Happy to take questions. I know there's a lot of information in the packet of information that I sent to you. And thank you, Greg, for running through the edits for it as well.
Sure. And I just want to point out, in making those edits, somehow the price got swapped with the unit. So the recommendation is for the Zoll unit for about $45,000. I think the memo says 46,000.
There's my first question.
So if you look at the attachments, there's one for Zoll and one for the Life Pack. The pricing on those two attachments is accurate, and we are seeking permission to purchase the Zoll unit. So the Stryker there are two major brands that are used in this area. One is Stryker, formerly known as Life Pack. So some people know it as a Life Pack. The other one is Zoll, like the AED that's in the lobby out here is a Zoll brand, and most of the ones in the town are Zoll. Most of our neighboring ambulance crews, let's see, Richmond, Williston, you use them, Air Guard has one, Colchester Rescue, St. Mike's Rescue, they use the Zoll brand. Again, our team has evaluated both of them. Essex Rescue uses the Life Pack, so we've seen both of them. They've touched them both. They prefer the Zoll. Not only is it a little bit less money, but it's a smaller, compact unit. Sure.
I think. Questions?
My second question that I had the difference in company. What's the life expectancy on something like this?
Great question. Life expectancy is at least 10 years. The unit will come with a 5-year warranty through the two local distributors that we have. The Zoll one has a 5-year warranty. At the end of the 5 years, they will negotiate a price with us to extend that warranty further. It's based on how we've used the machine, what kind of condition it's in. As referenced in there, we could buy a refurbished one, but the gamble there is it doesn't come with a long warranty, and we don't know what the underlying cause was of why it was returned to become refurbished. However, if ours has not had a terrible life and hasn't been dropped a bunch of times and misused, we too could, at 10 or 15 years down the road, potentially send ours in to be refurbished, as well as adding, by that time, I'm sure we're going to add more of these units to our inventory.
Thank you.
Ethan.
I got a question, and I'm just curious if we need to buy more than one set of pads and cuffs and.
We do, and we will. Some of that will come out of our operating inventory money, not the capital fund.
Okay. Because I just was looking through and I'm like, we should have at least half a dozen.
Correct. So to be fair, the final invoice will probably be larger than this because we will add some of that in there so that we do have sufficient inventory to get off and running at the beginning.
And that'll be paid for out of your
operating funds.
Okay.
Sometimes the incoming ambulance, if they have the same set of pads, we can take a set from them and keep the current set on them. So like if Colchester Rescue came in and wanted to give us a set of pads, that's not a guarantee, but that often happens. So we would be even at that point. But yes, we still will need to carry our own inventory.
Figured you had planned ahead for that one, but I want to be sure.
Kendall, do you have qualified staff available 24/7?
We do. John?
Yes. We have the per diem program that runs Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Our other EMTs that are volunteers run around the clock when they're available. As long as we have an EMT available, they'll be there. We have a few that live really close to the station, and this monitor will be on one of the vehicles, and they can take that vehicle and go to the scene and use it there. This monitor would be used every day. Every day that it is in the vehicle, we would be able to use it. And there's been at least 12 occasions where we've been waiting for an ambulance longer than 15 minutes, where we could have had a 12 lead and saved on time or on scene time for the transporting ambulance. So this would be a huge asset for the town.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that you guys didn't already have one. So I assume you've been trying to get one for a few years through your capital. Will this capital purchase affect any of your other capital needs?
It will not.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Tracy?
So just because I'm curious, in the second paragraph in the memo, it talks about analyzes signals can be read by paramedics and physicians. Is there any limitation within the department who would be able to read?
Correct. So there's two, the doctor who will make the diagnosis of what care that patient gets beyond that. But some of our EMTs can read the 12 lead as it's coming across and be able to broadcast that information forward. These units also have the capability of electronically sending this data a variety of ways. So we can upload it to a secure cloud, which is what's happening now with the transport ambulances, so that the hospital's seeing it real time as it's going on. So a doctor can get right back on and tell you, your patient is having an event, you need to do this, need to do that, or the hospital is preparing what they're going to do as soon as that patient arrives.
So a little more into that statement there was, we can't interpret it, but when it prints off the sheet, it says what the interpreting. So we would just
It's programmed in.
give that out to the incoming ambulance, and if we thought we needed a medic, we could call for a medic earlier and get that help coming.
Okay. I just immediately, I thought, if you've ever been in for an x-ray, like the person who actually takes the x-ray can't tell you anything.
We can tell you what's going on with it.
They look at it and go, oh boy. No.
Yeah. Poker face.
Yeah.
And I did just want to make sure I was reading this right, that not only is the Zoll less expensive, but it also includes a 27% discount
On future
future
accessories and pads and
Okay.
supplies. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
I just have one more question out of curiosity, because I used to know this and I haven't been in touch as much as I used to be. So how many EMTs do we have on the fire department currently?
Currently, we have at least.
Last I knew was 4, but
Oh no.
No, we're like
10 plus.
yeah, at least
No
10.
kidding.
At least 10.
like I said, it's been
Well, so with the per diem staff, that added more available EMTs. Plus, as a per diem member, and as he is a per diem member, and she as well, we can come back in to assist on calls. So that's giving us another expertise to help out with those serious level calls. And then having the monitor gives us the capabilities to do our job that much further. So this would take us to a whole new level of service.
The other side piece is, if we get a call for a patient who's unresponsive, then that brings the whole fire department, because everyone is trained in the use of AED and CPR. So we will always bring extra hands. So that will also further help ensure that the equipment gets to the scene.
Any comments from the public? I don't see any hands in the room. Anybody online wanting to speak? Ask a question? Comment? I don't see any hands, so
Now I can.
go ahead, Don.
I make the motion that the select board waive the purchasing policy's bid requirement for major purchases due to the lack of qualified bidders, and authorize the purchase of one new Zoll X Series ECG unit with required attachments as detailed in attachment C for the total price of And it's now 40. I'm going to make it $45,900 because I hate that penny stuck in there. To be paid from the existing capital equipment funds.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Kendall. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes by 5-0. Thank you so much for the
Thank
work
you.
effort
Thank
on
you.
this.
We really appreciate
And good luck,
Thank you.
everyone. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Let us know when it comes in.
Yes, we will. We'll bring it by, all right?
Hopefully we'll show you. We won't have.
Well, I don't want to. No, don't
I
you
say the
don't bring
pads
it-
are like $88 a set.
All right. So let's see. I see that Sarah Reeves is here, but this next one probably, I don't know, shouldn't take very long at all. Let's do presentation and proposed revisions of the fiscal 2024 capital budget and 5-year plan, potential action to warrant a public hearing.
Sure. So this is just a preview tonight with the approval at town meeting to increase the capital tax from 2 cents to 3 cents. Dan Roy, Catherine Sonic, Aaron Martin, myself went through. We took a look at where to reassign or to assign the additional revenue that's coming in. That money is expected to generate an additional $161,000 in capital funds. We basically went back to what the requests were when we first started with the 2 cents. We plugged that money back in. You can see the list in the memo that's in the packet of where we recommend assigning that money. I think the only real change is that we added in the salt shed for Public Works. Wanted to get that on the capital list. There might be some grant money and grant opportunities to pursue that, but we definitely wanted to set some money aside, whether it's for matching or whether it's just to start building up for when we need to go after that if we can't get any grant money. Happy to take any questions, comments tonight. Regardless, looking to warn a public hearing probably at your next meeting, if that works, April 17th, and then you can have the public hearing and consider adopting the revised capital budget and 5-year plan at that.
I have what may sound like a stupid question. Who manages this natural resources part of this? Went from 0 to 11,000. I didn't know.
Yep. So that's primarily goes towards cutting down, replacing, or treating the ash trees, depending on the health of each tree. It's kind of a combination between the Conservation and Trails Committee, the planner, and Public Works. And that's part of last meeting, we got notified that we're part of Tree City USA.
Right.
And so that's part of their requirements is to have some money set aside for urban tree canopy
So
maintenance.
that would be different than from the general paths, walks, and trails?
Yes. Yep. Walks, paths, and trails is for the most part your sidewalks.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Ethan.
So that was not my whole question, but part of my question was, is the natural resources management line item new altogether? And if not, when was the last time it was funded?
It's not new. It's been funded. I can't remember exactly how old it was. It's been there for, I want to say, quite some time, and it's typically been towards tree maintenance of some sort or another. It's been a bit more focused probably the past 2 or 3 years, when the town adopted its street tree management plan to deal with emerald ash borer and some of the others. It was not funded when we had the 2 cents. We took the funding out this year. There was a request there for $12,000. We took it out this year thinking we were going to be short from what we were expected, and thinking we could use undesignated capital for that year or go after grants or both.
So according to this chart, it was funded in 2023, in FY23.
Yes.
But it was not funded in the original FY24 that we approved.
Correct.
And then this is putting back almost all of it was requested. So it was funded at $12,000 in the current fiscal year that we're in. There was $12,000 requested for FY24, but it was taken out because of the
We thought to be a shortage.
the change in the.
So
Yeah.
that was kind of part of my other question, and I was wondering, and I'm just asking where does this be compared and seen? But we did move $200,000 to capital to cover underfunded capital projects. I'm just curious if there's a way, and maybe it's already there to see, but I just wanted a little clarification, and I knew it was going to be brought to the next meeting, but a way to show that $200,000, where we're doing with it, and then also show this 1 cent increase.
So we put
And that way they're not crossing, or if they are crossing, I don't know if they are. I just have a really hard time with the capital map.
Yeah.
In general, because there's the same numbers sometimes in different areas.
Mhm.
So I wasn't sure if that was incorporated.
I'm gonna have to double check with Dan, unless somebody else here remembers. My recollection was that we assigned that 200,000 to undesignated capital,
Yes.
Right.
which would then be allow it to be drawn from as needed. So that'll show up on the very last line.
Okay.
And I forgot to print out these hard copies, so I
Yeah.
can do that for you, so you can read it a little bit better than what's on the
So
PDF here.
so to answer
We
my
don't have a
question, kind of,
mic-
it may not be assigned at all then yet.
It's
We
assigned
just
to
put it in
the
there.
200
it's assigned to
200,000.
undesignated.
Right.
It's assigned
Okay.
undesignated.
So we just put it in there to cover if we didn't get the increase, but now we have the increase, so we're 200 ahead, essentially.
Kind of. I mean, each year when there's fund balance, we recommend assignments. I'd have to dig up the history, but it's often a recommendation to put that money into undesignated capital.
Okay.
Which can then be used for whether we have an emergency that comes up, or a real good opportunity, or a grant opportunity where we need to match funding. That's when we often draw from undesignated. Yes, before we had this 3 cents, we're banking on the 2. We were planning on using more of that undesignated in the coming year to fill that gap. Now we have a bit more flexibility. You've got more in the bank for those opportunities or emergencies.
So we can keep it as a reserve.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're up 2,000 because of the fund balance that we transferred in, but we're also short 50 because 161 is 50 short of what we used to get.
Right.
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 So there's
Right.
it's not, there's gives and takes there.
Yeah. 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 I just wanted to be prepared to answer the question of what'd you do with that $200,000 that you guys moved over, and I was like, I don't know.
It's there, and I also hear you on the presentation of capital. That's something I want to work on in the coming year, of trying to figure out how to better present
Awesome.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
And by me, I mean the whole team.
And that is the perfect segue into my comment, in that I am yet again impressed by staff that they can move this money, but it still feels to me like it's Oliver just saying, please, sir, can I have a little bit more? I would really like to know what is needed for your capital versus what is funded.
Mhm.
So I looked through all of the plans and stuff, and I just can't really see where the numbers are coming from, what you need. And my question would be, like, I'm sure you probably have a road reconstruction, like a paving plan
Mhm.
with an 8-year go through the pavement or so. It would be very helpful to have that information available.
Yep.
So that you could tell with a gravel plan, a road plan, a building plan, because some of your capitals are pretty well funded, like your parks and recs. They've got a pretty good balance, but other ones, they're really, really low.
Mhm.
So I'm just, I would like to know what is actually needed versus what is funded.
It's and we'll look to flesh that out in the coming months. Probably won't happen in the next 2 weeks, but do want to build that up. The fire department has its plan, whether it's equipment, vehicle replacements. Public Works has the same thing. We have a paving conditions index that gets updated every year or two, which takes a look at what roads are out there, where they're at. Get into the weeds here a little bit. When Public Works is presenting their planning schedule each year, it's not necessarily this is the worst street, we're going to go there, and then this is the next worst street, we're going to go there. They get better funding. They can be more efficient if they say, all right, this neighborhood has 3 of the 4 worst streets, and that 4th one's in decent shape, but it's going to make more sense to do it right now. Well, they're already there doing that paving, as opposed to doing one here, one there. So that's where some of that stuff gets a little complicated. Part of it too is a lot of the capital repairs come from grant money and come from grant funding. So a lot of this is match. It's kind of constantly shifting a little bit depending on what money comes in. So it's tough to say exactly this is the most important need, or that need, or this is a higher need than that. They're all kind of there as needs, and at a certain point, it's a balance of what are you trying to do that prevents further deterioration? What really does absolutely need to get done before it fails? And where's the grant money that's going to come in to support that? And sometimes you don't get the grant money, and after 2 or 3 years, you have to come and just say it's time to purchase that ECG with the money that we have available.
Yeah.
But what I envision is, having this plan in place, having a lot of that supporting documentation, streamlining, standardizing. All right, here's how the fire department budgets for its capital needs and schedules them. Here's how Public Works does that, and kind of streamlining some of that stuff too. Same with Parks and Rec. A lot of their maintenance is around facilities, parks, to make sure that the equipment doesn't deteriorate past a certain point.
Yeah. I mean, that's perfect. It's just that right now I would have a really hard time if somebody came and said, where's your plan? How much money? Where are you putting it?
Mhm.
I haven't been able to find the road plans and things. If those were accessible, then you could look and you could say, okay, so they're going to do 100,000 road reconstruction out of capital on these roads based on the plan.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just a matter of having that available,
Would
something to base it on.
would it be all right if I shared Dennis's book that he left us? Because that's got
Oh, yeah.
a lot of the information
Of
in it
course.
with Kendall.
Oh,
Yep.
That
Yeah.
might help.
You might.
do you have the, do you
copies?
have,
No, Kendall came on after. So
Dennis's parting gift to us, that thick book?
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
You
Well,
will go
now I
with
have
it.
one in my car. So
right.
thank you.
Any other board
That might
comments or
help.
questions? The question before us is whether to warn a public hearing for this. Should we ask for public comment? Folks have been pretty quiet tonight. Anybody have any comments? Okay, then,
Why you look at me? I make the motion that the select board warns a public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 capital budget and 5-year plan for April 17th.
thank you, Don. Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? All those in favor of warning the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And let's move on. I see Sarah Reeves is here. We're moving on to the presentation of and possible action to approve Chittenden Solid Waste District fiscal year 2024 budget.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the slot on your agenda tonight. You've got a full agenda, so appreciate the time. And Greg, is it okay if I can share my screen? I do have a short.
You can let me know if it's not possible, and I can try to give you that access.
Yeah, it's still saying host disabled.
Yep.
So I am Sarah Reeves. I am the executive director for Chittenden Solid Waste, and every year I come to my 18-member communities and ask for you to consider and then hopefully approve and adopt our budget. And I'm going to do this and do that. And I always like to kind of start with who we are, because I know we've had a lot of folks kind of new to Vermont, new to Chittenden County, who may not know who CSWD is. And we are a municipality formed back in the late 1980s by our member towns and cities to manage the solid waste generated by our residents, businesses, and schools and institutions on their behalf. And I also like to remind folks of where we receive our revenue and then also where we do not receive our revenue. So our revenue are basically 3 main buckets. We have user fees or tip fees, and those are the fees that are paid directly to us by our customers, say at our drop-off centers or at our compost facility. Then we have another bucket of material or product sales, so the sale of the compost that we make, or local color paint and recycling that is sorted at the MRF. And then a solid waste management fee, which is a fee that we charge haulers when they get to the landfill in Coventry for the disposal of every ton of Chittenden County waste that they're bringing there for ultimate disposal. I also like to let folks know how we're doing. And in Chittenden County, we actually do a really good job of diverting material from landfilling. And we could always do more. So the state, the state's goal is around 50% or so. They think we can ultimately get to 75%. There's always going to be that little bit that has to be landfill, but we in Chittenden County are already diverting 61% of waste from landfill. But of the material that is being landfill, a little more than half of that could still be diverted. So whether it's into blue bin recycling or into organics or composting, we might have some electronics or scrap metal that could be diverted to special waste, or something that is more better diverted as construction demolition debris. So this is my pitch to everyone to, before you put something in that trash bag, to just take one more moment and consider, is this the actual place that this needs to go, or can I actually put it in my recycling or Center for composting or some other disposal? So starting with our bottom line, we are budgeting revenue in the amount of $15,401,000. We are budgeting expenses in the amount of $14,402,000. So that delta of just under 900,000 will then be redirected into our reserve funds in a priority order. So our board established a priority of our reserves about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, so that when one reserve hits the max as determined by the board, the money, any remaining money will then go into the next reserve and then flow into the next reserve and into the next reserve, ultimately ending up in the capital reserve. A short, quick comparison this fiscal year to next fiscal year, we're anticipating revenue just an increase of just under 10% and an increase in our expenses at just under 9%. And I am pointing out the one increase that I'm actually excited about, which is our administrative cost increase. And the reason for that increase is that we have just moved our office space. So we had been in our offices Redmond Road and Williston for almost 30 years, I believe, close to 30 years. And we are this week moving into office space that we're sharing with the South Burlington Police Department in South Burlington on Gregory Drive. So the new administrative cost is going to be a lease, but we're really excited to be in a new location. This is a new slide that I don't think that the select board has seen before, and I wanted to kind of highlight for folks where those buckets of funding go and kind of where those monies are applied and what pays for what. So we tend to focus on the operations programs, and we call those the drop-off centers, the MRF, the environmental depot, the rover, the organic subversion facility. Those operations, those programs, those facilities, per our charter, need to be generating their revenue, covering their expenses from user fees or sale of products. It doesn't specify sale of products in the charter, but it does specify tip fees. And the solid waste management fees are used for providing education and outreach and providing programs and funding the managing administrative functions of the district. So that's always management fee. Again, is that it's $27 per ton. This fee has actually not changed in 10 years. And the philosophy of the board was, if we didn't need the revenue, there was no reason to just raise it just to raise it. I do want our board to think about that this year and just think about the philosophy and how we're utilizing this fee. It not only has been used for the administrative purposes and the education and outreach and communications purposes for the district, but it also has been used as the source of subsidy for the programs that are not covering their costs. So that's really what I want our board to think about. Our materials recycling facility, we are looking at an increase in the tip fee there from $80 a ton to $85 a ton. And this is directly related to the increase in the contract that we have with Casella to operate the MRF. So we hire them to do the day-to-day operations. That contract expired last June. The new contract is a short-term contract, really just for the duration of this existing building. As we go into building the new facility, that will be a different contract. But this one, that contract cost increased by 55%. So we had been paying them $45 a ton. And as of March 1st, we're now paying them $70 a ton. So we are increasing the tip fee just by $5 a ton to try to recover some of that expense. We are not raising it until July 1, so we'll be covering that increase for this last quarter, and then we'll wait to increase that on July 1st. We're also budgeting again conservatively for the average commodity revenue, so for the sale of the materials that are sorted by the MRF. And if you take a look in that column for fiscal 22, the material sales, that was an anomaly. That was not expected by anyone in the industry. Everyone saw some pretty banner sales and robust sales that year. That is not the norm. So we are sliding back into a more normalized revenue, commodity sales projection. The markets are stable but still suppressed. So we think there's some room to move up. There's still some growth that can happen, but certainly not at the level that we saw just 2 years ago. Our organics diversion facility, hopefully kind of you can see on that fiscal 22, we were looking at essentially breaking even, and that changed. And so part of the reason that changed is we're resulting in having to raise the fee from $65 to $70 per ton. And it was directly again related to the loss of inbound tons when Casella opened their new facility in Williston. They opened a depackaging facility where packaged foods that were not suitable for human consumption, for donation, or for animal feed that was still containerized. That food had to be removed from the container because it could no longer go into the landfill due to the ECMA 48's final component taking effect in 2020. So when that facility opened, not only were the packaged goods there brought there by Casella and other haulers, but also Casella diverted some of their source separated material there. So we've grabbed some of those tons back, but not nearly to the level that we were at in fiscal 22. So that's why it's showing a pretty significant subsidy in this current 23 budget, and then also similarly in 24. And that subsidy, that bit that's in the red, that is offset by solid waste management fee revenue. And similarly, our drop-off centers have also been budgeted in the red for many years. The fiscal 22 showed just under $400,000 subsidy this year for 22. And if we did not increase bag prices, we would again be needing a subsidy of $421,000. So we are increasing bag prices as of July 1. Small bag to $3, medium bag $8, and $11 for a large bag. The small bag is about up to 18 gallons of trash. The medium is 34 gallons of trash. And then the large bag is about 45 gallons of trash. And I included a line about the pre-COVID pricing. During COVID, we wanted to avoid taking coins. So, we rounded up or down from the pre-COVID, and we were at $2.75 for the small bag. So, it's a big increase from the current $2, a moderate increase from pre-COVID pricing. But again, without that increase, we would need a significant subsidy again. And our drop-off center system does represent about nearly 48% of our full-time employees, staffing, and so all of the associated costs with COLA, with healthcare benefits, all of those increases is affecting this budget, as is what we label materials management, which is the fees that we pay to haulers to move trash and recycling and composting onto other processes or onto disposal. So the fees that we pay to Casella or to Myers, or those have all gone up. So not only fees at the transfer station, fuel, other logistics, transportation, insurance, all of that has gone up. One change that we are also intending to make starting in July is shifting our drop-off center schedule so that all of the drop-off centers, except for Heinsberg, but everyone else is open the same schedule, Tuesday through Saturday. And this is designed to provide additional service to a few of our drop-off centers. So Milton will get much more service. they'll have 5 days a week instead of 3. Burlington will also have some increased service as well. And it will reduce confusion for customers. They will no longer have to worry about checking the checkerboard schedule on the website to see who's open when, and much easier to communicate. The only reason that we can't be open as many days in Pines Ridge is our lease says we can only be open one day. We choose Saturday. This is probably not surprising to the select board. The staffing challenges continue for everybody. We do have budgeted in this budget a 7% cost of living adjustment. We use the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index to monitor what the CPI is, and then we take that average over the course of the 12 months. So as of December, the 12-month average was 7.4%, so we rounded that down to 7. In order to try to offset some of the increases that everyone saw for healthcare, we moved our employees who are opting into the healthcare package to a higher deductible plan, and we are increasing their contribution of salary to 3.5% of salary on July 1. So those savings did help offset the total compensation cost per employee to where it only went up 1.4% compared to this fiscal year. I'm not going to talk too much about a capital plan, but just to point you to those major investments that we are planning for fiscal 24 to Milton Drop-Off Center and to the Burlington Drop-Off Center. And at the end of the year, we're anticipating having just under 3.4 million in that capital reserve. So the excess revenue that was excess in budget that we received from the MRF, the majority of that flowed into the capital reserve. The one reserve that I'm not entirely certain is going to have enough, and this is another topic that I'll ask my board to consider and discuss this year, how we increase this reserve, is for the post-closure for our landfills. We are responsible for maintaining three closed landfills in Williston, and we have to do that for 30 years, and we are at about year 28. So, and of course, shouldn't be surprising, but in the last couple to 5 years of any post-closure plan, that's when you start to see some things that need additional attention. Added to that is the unknown of what we will need to do if we need to treat our landfill leachate for the forever chemicals, for PFAS, for PFOA. That is an unknown cost at this point. And I know you all are familiar with that as well with the wastewater treatment plant. So we're not confident. I am not confident that we have enough money in that reserve to not have to augment what those costs may be. So we need to talk about how we want to supplement that reserve, and we'll be discussing that at the board level this year. And I do remind my cities and towns that per our charter, that the legislative bodies of each of our member municipalities must vote to approve the district's budget. That is one of your responsibilities. And I will stop the share and ask if there are any questions.
Any questions?
I have a question. I was curious to know more about the organic waste. And I was wondering if with the creation of the new MRF that you guys foresee that going down. I mean, to me it seems, and I know this is just me seeming, but it would be one of our easiest materials to recover, and 45% of it's going into the landfill. So just curious on what thoughts were on that.
Thank you for asking the question. That is still the area of our greatest opportunity for landfill diversion, is food scraps and other organics. So because the last phase of Act 148 just took effect 2.5 years ago, we're still, believe it or not, in the educating phase of letting people know you need to keep food scraps out of the landfill. You don't have to compost if you can't backyard compost, but you do have to somehow find a way to keep them out of your trash. So we're still working on that, and we did see a huge uptick in participation in composting programs and people wanting workshops from us to learn how to compost, in hiring haulers to collect their food scraps for them. A huge boom right after, in that summer of 2020. But to your point, there's a huge opportunity still yet to be had. So if we could get, as many food scraps out of, currently they're going into landfill, out of the landfill, that will make a very, very big difference. Food scraps are heavy. And, waste, in my opinion, is always best managed as close to the source of generation as possible. And if you can turn those food scraps into compost or compost products and put it back into the soil, that's what you want to be doing. On the other side of that is, we really don't want to be generating as many food scraps in the first place. So how to not create the waste is just as important as how do you manage that waste. So more effort and more work on making sure that you're not creating the need for having to manage food scraps will also be a focus in the next few years for us too.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And then I was just curious, is the state involved in any way with the whole composting food scrap, and do they give you guys sort of support or guidance, or do they have a long-term plan on how they intend to satisfy the goal of composting? And
great question. So one of the roles, much of the enforcement and the management is ceded to districts. So we are able to pass a local ordinance, and so we have local enforcement authority. The state does have overall state enforcement authority, but where they provide support is they have offer grants every year to solid waste management entities to be able to do programs, to purchase equipment, to do pilots, to really help support these programs. There's never enough money, frankly, for all the work that does still need to be done. But that's really where their support is. They offer feedback and input, and they obviously develop the rules and regulations. But they're not the boots on the ground. We're the boots on the ground.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Kendall, go ahead.
It looks like your capital plan has some investments in the Essex Drop-Off Center.
Yes, we do.
Questions about, are you going to bring back the reuse part of it? There are quite a few folks that really like that. I believe the experiment in Richmond has turned out to be positive, so I wondered where you folks were on that.
Yeah, thank you for asking about the reuse part. And one of the long-standing philosophies of our board has been, we want to make sure that one of our purposes is to ensure that residents, businesses, anyone in Chittenden County has the ability and the to manage their waste kind of at a base level. We want to make sure that we are always providing a certain base level. But if the private sector or charitable sector can provide a similar service or the same service at the same cost or lower cost, then we don't need to be in that business. And so we are kind of routinely looking for where are services being duplicated. And that was one of them. One of the other issues that we had with the reuse centers was they tended to kind of collect a lot of stuff that was ultimately trash. So we were throwing a lot of the material out because it might have been something broken, it might have been something dangerous. We would routinely see fertilizers and pesticides and things that just should not be there. So we would have to be disposing of that. And we would get folks in who would kind of linger. We had some folks coming up, for example, from St. Albans who would make the rounds of the reuse centers, and they would take up the spots and they would just kind of wait for people to bring stuff in. And it wasn't suiting the mission. And when we have places like Restore and, that Goodwill and Salvation Army that are providing those services, it was time. And one of the things too, it caused some safety issues as far as lots of backups. And we thought, well, it's no longer working the way it had originally worked 25 years ago. Having said that, what we will have when we build the new MRF is another building. So the current facility, the current recycling facility, our board is going to need to talk about, well, what's the future for this building? Do we want to maintain that? One of the topics, one of the items has been, can we bring back a more centralized reuse area? It wouldn't, it wouldn't be at each of the drop-off centers because again, those same conditions exist. And I think if we had been able to maybe purchase our own property and really design the space properly for reuse zone, that might be different. But we are constrained by the sites that we are provided by our host towns. So, but that could be one possible option as a use for that building. So that's a little kind of exciting to say, well, what are the possibilities? What might we be able to do with the current building? And that'll, I'm guarantee, will be up for a conversation.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, Sarah. So I'm going to ask mine. It's a different question than I've asked you in the past.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So part of your materials talked about projecting increases, future increases for how much waste gets generated and so forth. One of the things that residents in Essex have been commenting about is the number of trucks that pass through our town. And there's almost a continuous flow of trucks on their way to and from Coventry, down Route 15 here. They're full on their way east and they're empty on the way back. My wife and I actually were going up to Morgan, Vermont one time when we were on Route 100, and there were 5 of those trucks in a row in front of us, and 2 of the 5 were shedding material as they went along. And so that may not be something you can deal with, but it was certainly disturbing for us. But I guess the question is, do you work with the Regional Planning Commission or the state or whomever is responsible, or I don't know who the appropriate folks would be to address the question, with climate change action that's going to be happening. Transportation is going to get much more expensive. We've got one landfill at the far end of the state. What's
right
going on there?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking this. This is a very, very important topic. And as I mentioned earlier, I am a firm believer in managing the waste that's generated as close to the source of generation as possible and not trucking it all over the place. It's not always possible, but as much as you can do that, I think we should try to do that. And the Coventry landfill, owned by, it's a Casella-owned facility. It currently is permitted area for filling. The cell has about 20 years. There's not a guarantee that another cell will be permitted by the state. So 20 years sounds like a long time. It is not. We need to be having these conversations now about what is the alternative? What are the alternatives? What is out there, what's working? In the Northeast, there is not a lot of options for out-of-state landfills to bring Vermont's material. And that would be the first answer would be all of it gets sent out of state. That doesn't sit right with me. Again, I don't want to put our issues on someone else. So what does that then say is, okay, well, do we want to look in Vermont to where we could build additional landfills? Are there roles for other types of managing material that is not a landfill? Because, to our benefit, we have preserved a lot of our land in this state and conserved it. And landfills take up a lot of space. You need a couple of 100 acres to do something for a significant amount of time. That's a lot of property. Again, to put it in the hole in the ground. So the time really is now to start having the conversations about alternatives. So we have been having conversations with folks at A&R, at Agency of Natural Resources, to say, please, we need the conversation to start now, because these types of facilities can take 10 to 15 years to properly site and to build, and it needs to be really strongly vetted. So I would love for us to, even, within Chittenden County, have more focused conversations about, well, what do we want as Chittenden County? Is there a role for us as this entity to direct our own material? Because there's not a lot of space in Vermont that would be suitable for another large landfill, and I don't think that's the answer. I don't think that's the answer. So I think in the next 2 years, I think you'll start to hear more. And it's a great idea to reach out to Charlie, and I will certainly make sure that, I know I have talked to him about this in the past, but I'll make sure that I reach out to him again and just say, hey, just putting this back on your radar, and let's talk about it, because you're right, the truck traffic is excessive, it's heavy. And one of the ways that Burlington and South Burlington were trying to get a handle on it, but it didn't really work, was offering consolidated collection in their cities. They didn't progress all the way, but that could help reduce, at least on the residential side, some of the trucks. But that also is a process. So not super rosy news, I think, but it is something that we are, in the very near term, we've already started those conversations. We can't wait, because if we wait, we are out of options, and then really the only option is putting all of our trash on rail and shipping it out.
All right, thank you. Any more board member questions? Open up to public comment. Anybody in the public have any comments or questions? Got a quiet crowd tonight, so it doesn't look like it. So would somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion that the select board approve the CSWD proposed FY24 budget.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Ready? Take care. You can stay if you want, or see you later. See you next time. Okay, move on to the next agenda item. The next 3 agenda items are discussions about how we as a select board operate. The first is rules and regulations of orderly conduct of business. Ethan had asked if I would go through do you want me to do that? Go through a little highlight of them, or you want to just move on?
We can move on. You can send. I'll take my own reading later on.
So does anybody have?
I'm good. My eyes hurt.
Any questions or comments about the 3 policies that are there? There's rules and regulations of orderly conduct of business, which tells how we run meetings, has definitions about around meetings, conflict of interest policy, and the communications policy. I'll take any questions on any of those.
I have, my first one is, why does this planning committee have a separate conflict of interest policy?
Statute says that they have the right to establish their own.
What statute? State statute?
State statute, yeah.
And the other one is that my other question was under orderly conduct of business. And maybe it was in the proposed new, charter. Or maybe I read it in the old one. Whereas any petition coming before the board, you had 60 days to act in a timely fashion. And it doesn't give you a timeline in this one. Did that come out as a proposal for the new one, or did I read that in the old one? That was my other question.
So if a petition comes, I think statute.
It's your charter. It's either your charter, your statute, or both. It's not part of the rules and regulations here.
Okay, well, all right, but should that be? Just a minute. Let me find this. What was it? Communications. What was it?
Generally try to avoid having the same information in multiple places twice. That way you make sure you get to keep it.
Okay, well, that was what. Okay. All right.
If we leave it unsaid, then statute prevails.
Okay. Okay. That was my question. All right. That makes sense then. All right. Thanks.
And
I've been watching Morristown, I believe it is. And they've had some issues with some conflicts of interest. And I did notice in our policy there isn't any specification as to the town manager could not be a select board member, or the town clerk could not be the select board member. There are some town positions that,
yeah, I don't know if statute
I mean,
is incompatible positions. I don't
yeah,
know.
incompatible positions. I mean, even just if it's noted somewhere that there are incompatible positions and that a board member couldn't be the town clerk or something like that.
I think that there's reference to that in the charter. I mean, not specific to select board manager, but other
Well, it's-
positions, if I'm not.
Yeah, I don't think so because I looked into it just recently when the city did theirs and they just changed theirs to 1 year, I believe. As far as a select board member, or city council member being hired,
Becoming an employee.
becoming an
Yeah,
employee.
we don't have anything about that.
We don't have anything about that. So
No, we
you
don't.
could be both, as far as I understand it, unless it's written somewhere that you can't. But I could essentially resign as a select board member and be the highway manager tomorrow. You know what I mean? Not saying that.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't be an employee of the town and sit on the board. Is that what you're saying?
No, it doesn't say that.
Right. See, that's my.
But I'm just saying that, like they just they just made theirs 1 year, just to have that separation. And I like I said, I did the best research that I knew how to do. And I didn't find anything that said anywhere that you couldn't be, for one, on a board, commission, or committee and be employed by the town, or for two, that I could resign today and become a member, become an employee of the town tomorrow. So I don't know if that's know if that falls in here or if that's
It's we don't have a policy about who the town manager can choose to hire.
I don't know if that I don't
We
know if
could have-
that's
we-
defined under conflict of interest or if that would be something different.
I don't know.
I was just thinking of it when Kendall just sparked it back in my head, but I was thinking of it when I was reading what the city had done, and then reading through this, I'm like, oh, I wonder. Like I said, there could be something out there, but I did pretty extensive research and I didn't find anything that.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure there's nothing that says you can't be hired immediately upon, and I guess I'd have to do more research about incompatible.
Employee.
Positions, whether there's anything there. I think without immediate input on what changes you would want to make, then I don't know. Do we want to? We could defer.
Yeah, we can put this on our list of things to look at for the future. It wasn't anything I necessarily had in my mind of how it should or shouldn't be. It was things that I had thought of that,
So there's nothing that says we have to approve these tonight, right? The only thing we really need to do is elect officers tonight and schedule our meetings, right? Those are the two things we have to do. This is more of a historical thing that we've done so that everybody's aware of what our policies are going into a.
And we've had times recently where they're not approved at this meeting because we have questions or changes, stuff like that.
Yeah, I did have one other question about the communications policy because, and like I said, I may not understand things the best way that I read them, but in response to public comments, and not necessarily comments, but if a statement is made, and this goes to formal positions of the select board, and I'm thinking more of formal positions of the town. If a statement is made at a meeting that is false, like it's false information saying that somebody attended a meeting or didn't attend a meeting or did this or whatever, and it's known to be inaccurate, what formal position and have a select board member, or what formal position would the town take to relay, thank you for your comments, but that is untrue, and how would you do that?
So it's the First Amendment, free speech allows
Right.
anybody to say, because you're an elected official,
Right.
you don't have the same rights as
Right.
as people can say things that aren't true about you, and there's not much you can do about it.
Right.
We don't have an official policy about trying to correct things that have been said incorrectly. I don't know. I guess that's.
Well, I ran into that situation in my first year
we can't
on the
control
board.
we can't control what other people say.
Right. And I responded. And then recently, or after that, had asked about my response, and it kind of was, well, you said that it wasn't true, and showed them I wasn't true. So that was the question of, is that okay? Or
is it okay for you to say that that's not true? Yes, absolutely.
Or should that be more of the town stance of saying, this didn't happen? I don't know.
I don't know.
Because in here it says that, basically, in the next section, responses to public comment, it says, that.
It all goes to the chairman.
Right. And it says you don't have any legal protections for defamation or blah, 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 blah. So I didn't know. And like I said, this is just conversation, but should there be a procedure on how to do that and not just a guideline?
Not sure I'm understanding, but I guess we can have more discussion on that.
What's the difference?
If that happened, well, if that
The
happened,
guideline. What's your difference between guideline and procedure, Ethan? I guess.
well, this is just an outline.
It's like the pirate code.
This is an outline. This doesn't tell you how to deal with it. It just tells you what's okay and what's not okay. You know what I mean?
I would say it's a.
It could be more into training, but this happened this year, and I asked the question after.
I remember.
Everybody said, "I don't know."
I remember it happening.
So
but that's why everything should go through Andy, and then Andy does the response. So that way, it's not a he said, she said. Andy made the response. Here it is. Right? I mean, that's what I.
And what happens when the comments about the chairman?
Oh, so when I was elected chair for the first time 2 years ago, at least 3 people asked me to resign 10 minutes later. And I said, thank you for your comments, and we went on.
We moved on. Yep.
That's how it goes. Yeah.
However, I think the difference is that I think if I'm remembering correctly, that happened during a meeting, right?
During a meeting.
So that wouldn't fall under the public communication. That's only if the select board is speaking, the chair is representing a select board stance in an official communication. I mean, if someone says something that's untrue about you, I wouldn't have a problem saying, no, I'm sorry, but in engaging during the meeting, but whether how long that would be allowed to go on would be under the orderly conduct of business and would fall to the chair to make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines of the agenda and so on and so forth. Okay. If it's like a public statement, that's where this would come in. Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. True. This policy doesn't cover how we react to what other people say. But yeah, and yeah, I guess it was kind of ambiguous because I remember when that happened. Now you did say that it wasn't.
Well, I asked you if I could make a comment. I said, "Can I respond?" And you said, "Yeah, go ahead."
Yeah.
So then after we were like, "All right." So I just figured I'd bring it up because I was like, I don't, this is the time to have that conversation. But
did you want to have more discussion about the communication policy at some? Okay, not right now, but at a future time. It sounds like we want to have some more discussion about incompatible offices and or hiring after. I'd like to drive one of those
senior vans.
The senior van, but if I can't do it, year after I quit, I'm going to quit now so I can do it a year. You know, I don't know. I really would like to drive one of the senior buses. I like those kind of people. But anyway, sorry, I shouldn't have.
Well, you're
gone off
good.
on a tangent like that. But yeah, I think maybe we want to have a discussion about that. Do we want to approve the other two, or do we want to have more?
I think we should. I have no problem with the other two, and we should revisit this one. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to revisit the conflict of interest policy. That what you were just referring to?
No, communication. I thought it was communications you wanted to revisit.
Well,
I don't have a problem with any of them.
Kendall
so-
raised the question about incompatible offices, and then there was also a discussion about employment after being on the select board, which would both fall in, I think, under the conflict of interest policy.
Oh, okay.
I think you know the question that Ethan was raising about the communications policy was a question of whether it was appropriate for him to respond to an incorrect statement that was made about him in the meeting. And I guess the policy is not clear on that, but I think it was fine that he did it. And now that, you know, it's clearer in my mind now to certainly allow people to respond to those kind of things in the moment rather than.
Yeah, and I'm totally okay with
So
the way it's
you're
written.
good with communications and you're good with orderly conduct of business, but revisit conflict of interest. So we want, okay, that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine.
Yep.
That's fine.
So do we need to approve those? I mean, they're already signed. Unless we change
They have
them,
to
we
be
don't actually
updated.
re-sign them, right?
I want to say each year you approve them to say this is what you're operating on this
Yeah.
year. Even if there's no changes, you
I
still
think so.
approve them.
I think so too.
All
So-
right, then I make the motion to select board approve the rules and regulations for orderly conduct of business and to approve the communications policy as presented this evening.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard Ethan first. Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? I didn't allow public comment. They've been pretty quiet tonight. Anybody have any public comment? Any comment from the public on this? Okay, they're still quiet. So, we're voting to approve the two policies. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. We've approved the rules and regulations, order of conduct of business, and the communications policy. We'll revisit the conflict of interest policy. And my understanding is the question is to clarify whether there's anything in statute about incompatible offices. And then we want to have a discussion about post service employment.
I didn't see that 1 year after. I gotta go back and read
Yeah.
that one. I must have missed that part.
I'm not sure it needs to be a year, but it is bad form if a position was filled that the select board had direct control over from a select board member.
Well, then you're right,
So-
because Parks and Recs has the senior bus, Andy, so you can go through Parks and Rec.
So we could have some of that discussion now if you want. The truth is the manager runs the town and the
Right.
select board doesn't. You know, in a town that doesn't have a charter that specifies manager council form of government, the select board absolutely runs the town. We don't actually run the town. The manager does by statute. You know, as soon as we've signed that charter that says we're a manager council form of government, you know, all that authority got turned over to the manager. So we're not managing specific positions, and so that's maybe an argument against putting in those restrictions. But
We can go back and
we
visit.
can go have that discussion.
Unless what you're asking is if the manager is not here, there's a vacancy in the manager position and a select board member gets appointed as manager. Is that what you're?
Yeah, or I mean, the board and the manager work very closely, and if there was a position and I was lobbying, I was a select board member, and it was in a term. I mean, it's just bad form. Even if I was the most qualified, it should be
that's
something in the policy that says, "Look, you know, I can't get this job because."
Yeah, that's abuse of your position to do that.
Yeah,
to-
I mean,
yeah.
And I listened to their conversation that they had.
Okay.
And that, you know, the idea behind it is a select board member or somebody who just left the select board has a relationship with the town manager, has a relationship with public works, with the fire department, with recs. Somebody who applies for a job who just moved to town doesn't know anybody, you know, and there's that, and you know, there's just that section of it.
Tracy.
Considering that the select board really only hires the manager, I'd be interested in Travis's thoughts around whether this really belongs in a conflict of interest policy or a hiring policy that's more broadly applicable.
Right.
Good point.
Good point.
Maybe it's already hidden in there.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
That's the one thing I didn't look at. I didn't know where to find
Do you have
it.
enough information?
Probably not public information.
Think so?
Looking at this. Okay. Thanks so much. All right.
For the purpose of moving on, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion that we accept this letter about the local option tax. Go ahead.
So there's some changes that have been recommended since it was put out in the packet.
Oh, all right.
Good try. Good try.
I tried to move it along. Sorry. I liked the letter. I thought it was pretty good.
Tracy drafted up the letter, and you can speak to it. I won't catch up. I do just want to point out the last paragraph in there where it talks about reaching out to Ways and Means to ask Legislative Council about mandating online vendors to do the 9-digit zip code. I've spoken to Jean O'Sullivan, who's our Economic Development Coordinator. She's also a former state legislator, very familiar with the process and the people and the committees and all that. She said that can come out. It's really all running through the tax department. They're the ones who would reach out to businesses. They're the ones who would enforce that 9-digit zip code. So that's just a change that I would point out if you approve the letter.
That's fine.
Did we also want to add in the sentence about the amount of effort that we put into this, in spite of it not being really our problem, supposedly? Do we want to include that?
Say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So there was I have to think of find the words that there was a suggestion that we add in a comment or a sentence about the amount of effort that we have had to put into sorting this out. If I can find the words that were proposed here. I think, Greg, you put them in your email to me.
Yeah, I'm looking to find that too.
I don't think it's necessary.
Can I ask a quick question while you're looking for that? About town, the Essex Selectboard? Did I not pay enough attention in English?
No, that's the other correction too.
Okay, because I was reading it, I'm like, hey, I know I'm not the smartest fellow on the street when it comes to books.
Oh, where it says town v. Essex? Yeah. The proposed sentence is staff from the town of Essex. No.
Okay.
No.
Presented, but we also, maybe it is.
It could be typos in that.
Oh, right. Here it is. Yeah. Staff from the town of Essex and Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission have done and continue to do a lot of outreach and education to Essex businesses about local option tax collection. Even so, we continue to hear from residents and businesses about local option tax being collected in error. Just want to acknowledge the work that we've been doing and let them know that we've had to do a lot of effort to get this to work right.
I would recommend putting that between the any person or business can call and the select board is asking to say the businesses can call. The staff of the town have also put in this level of effort. So now here is the ask.
Yeah.
And I would also ask that just somebody go through and correct possible grammatical errors. And I note that sometimes local option tax is capitalized, other times it's not. So just consistency. I was not consistent when I wrote it.
So there's two suggestions. One is to take out the paragraph about ways and means. The other is to add in this other pair of sentences that talk about the effort that the town and the Regional Planning Commission have put in, and the fact that we're still finding businesses that are collecting the tax incorrectly.
So,
Kendall, did you have another?
I was just going to add, it's a great letter, but I've had some folks say that more fire and brimstone should be put into it. But it's a great letter the way it is. Just note that.
Just a point of clarification, we are also asking that the Ways and Means ask Legislative Council. We're
Yes.
keeping the paragraph in there that talks about the 9-digit.
Yes.
Yes.
Correct. The reason is that the
Okay.
tax department already
I just want
has.
to make sure.
Yep. And so they're the ones enforcing that 9-digit.
Perfect. I like it. I like Tracy's suggestion where to input that paragraph. Your addition. That's a perfect spot for it. Reads well.
It's Greg's edition, not mine.
For Greg's edition.
The two of you asked for it. So.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not crazy about town Essex Selectboard.
Any other board member
That's fancy.
comments, questions? Anybody from the public want to comment on this? Betty Poulin, I see your hand up.
Hi there. Thanks for drafting this letter. I think it's an important move. I have a suggestion that's not necessarily directly related to this, and then I do have a question specific to lot. And one of the things that seems to be happening with some of the businesses that are charging the lot is that they don't necessarily know if they're in the city of Essex Junction or the town of Essex. And I think that's and while it doesn't necessarily, for me, impact lot, one of the things I've been happy to be able to do is to be able to update my address for anything that's mailed to me to be Essex instead of Essex Junction. And again, I know that doesn't affect tax at all, but I've updated it everywhere I can. And I'm almost a little annoyed now when I get something from mailed to me Essex Junction. But apparently what I'm doing is working, because I got 3 pieces of junk mail today and it was addressed to me at Essex instead of Essex Junction. So apparently it's working. Just one suggestion for the town. I did get 2 pieces of mail from the town recently. One was my water sewer bill, and one was my school ballot. And both of those were addressed to me in Essex Junction. So I wondered if, as we try to educate people as to where they live, if the town would consider changing the label on the address of when we mail things to residents and businesses, to put Essex instead of Essex Junction. So just a general suggestion. Again, I know that doesn't impact lot directly, but it might help us in helping people identify where they live. And then my question is, I was just curious. I know you said you've put a lot of time in, and I know that you have, and but I'm just curious what kind of communication the town has had with businesses. You know, it seems that nowadays we're counting on like these random discoveries of the tax being charged, and some of these businesses have been doing it for 6 months. Nowadays, if you ask for a receipt, you almost feel guilty because you feel like you're not being environmentally conscious because you're asking for a piece of paper. And even if you have the receipt, how many people really study it, right? I sent you all a note in, I don't know, mid-October. I had been away when I discovered my Hannaford bill had the extra 1%. So I was just curious if there's communications from the town directly to businesses. I served on the Economic Development Commission for, I think, over 10 years. I know that they have a database of businesses, and I was just curious what kind of communication the town has with businesses to help, advocate for them, because I feel badly for these businesses that are charging the tax incorrectly. I think it puts a stigma on them, and again, I think it's unfortunate that the town is having to deal with this when we didn't choose to have this tax. That so much of the burden is on us to make sure that we aren't charging it. But I'm just curious what kind of communication, if anything, that the town is having with businesses. So thanks.
Greg.
Sure, Betty, good question. Going back to when the local option tax was first instituted in Essex Junction and we found out it was happening or being charged in town, our staff did a number of things, reached out directly, in some cases numerous times, to businesses that we knew were being charging the local options tax. We heard a lot of that from residents, from personal experience of staff. And so Tammy Getchell and Jean O'Sullivan in particular did a lot of direct outreach, a lot of communication, and sometimes it was working their way up the chain from a store manager to owner type of thing to try to get that process out and educated. Worked with the Regional Planning Commission and Essex Junction, to their credit, did a lot of that work as well in trying to educate people and confirm what was or was not in Essex Junction. The Regional Planning Commission got involved. They built a geolocating device that we've posted on our website. You can type in your address. It'll tell you if you're in Essex or Essex Junction. Shared that with a lot of the businesses and residents to try to help people understand whether it's going out and shopping or whether it's ordering something online and figuring out if you're being charged the local options tax or not. I think there was a lot of outreach done on our website, information on our website, outreach on Front Porch Forum, Facebook to try to educate residents and business owners. Tammy and Jean in particular still do that outreach to business when we hear about issues or if it's still being charged. Working with some residents who took a more active interest in it with the online sellers, online retailers. You've seen this work that Jean has been doing with the state and outreach to state departments, state officials. So that's a lot of it. I'd have to double check with Jean and Tammy to see if I'm missing anything about business outreach and what we've done with them. And if there was more of a blanket mailing or direct outreach, just kind of a blanket email, blanket phone calls, anything like that. I can't recall offhand, but I can check in on that and get back to you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, as you know, I just there was a time early on when I was making an effort as a consumer, but also sort of a an interest for our town business community, that I was going to businesses to try to kind of test the waters, if you will. But I kind of stopped doing that, and I almost feel like I want to do it again, because I just feel badly for these businesses that, I mean, it's nothing. Anyway, it's wrong that if they charge it, but I don't personally hold the business accountable, because I just think the process has been kind of confusing, and thank God we didn't go into a mode where both municipalities were charging the tax, because we'd be sending all kinds of money to the city. So no, I had told you before. I mean, if it feels warranted that visits to individual businesses or communication with the businesses in the town is warranted, I'm happy to help with that. But no, it's fine with what you've told me so far. And again, thanks for the work and the proposed letter to the state, and hopefully we can nip this in the bud if this is, I mean, if it really is possible. It really seems to rely on the individual businesses to, I guess, fill out a piece of paper. I'm not 100% clear on the process, but what you've provided for information is fine. You don't need to follow up. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Betty. Okay. Any other public comment? Don't see any other hands. So do we want to motion to approve with amendments, or do we want to come back?
I will rescind my original one, and I will change it to approving the letter with corrections to be sent.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ethan. Any further discussion? So the motion is to approve the memo with the addition of the two sentences proposed by Greg, the removal of the paragraph about ways and means, and a general edit. Grammar and formatting.
To ensure it's from the town of Essex.
Town of Essex instead of town of the Essex. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. And thank you, Tracy, for the draft for that.
Welcome. Thanks to staff as well on that.
And for stepping up and offering to do it. Thank you. Okay, next question is facilities use policy. We have discussed this previously. The question came up about political parties wanting to use meeting space for organizational meetings. Practice in the past has been that that was not allowed because of their the political affiliations, and so. But the proposal was to allow organizational type meetings. No political activity for both political and religious organizations, but no political activity or religious activity. So because it's been a while since we've looked at this, we wanted to accept it tonight and then approve it in the future. Any more you want to add to that?
No, tried to capture the changes. It was a good 6 or 7 months ago, so finally got back to dusting this off. So hopefully I've captured some of the concerns and changes, but bring it back to you tonight for review and can certainly consider any other edits before bringing it back for acceptance or adoption.
I would recommend replacing marijuana with cannabis.
Keith? I'm sorry. Yeah.
I have a couple questions, but if we want to talk about bringing this back to another meeting, I'm more than happy about that too. But I would like to see person limits on the police department and the town offices. I would like to see $10 a table for the police department, $20 for non-resident.
What are you talking about? I'm sorry, Ethan.
I'm talking
I
about the
lost you
fee
here.
structure
Oh, wait.
on Appendix A fee
Sorry,
structure.
I lost you here.
There's no limitation to the amount of people, and I know that this room has a limitation.
Well, there is, but it's per fire code, and the reason it's written that way is because it depends on whether you have tables in here.
Right.
And so the configuration of the room determines the number of people that you can have. And so it's a little, and I think you.
Where do the tables go?
Yeah, no.
They get slid up against the wall, basically.
And then that allows more people to be in here.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
How many more people?
Almost double.
Almost double.
Maybe not quite that much.
I'm just concerned that we're not charging a fee, especially for non-residents.
It's not for non-residents, for residents.
So there's a non-resident column in there.
Yeah, it says you can do non-resident, $0.
The police department, and there's a couple of things I guess to say about that. One is that generally never have anybody who's not a resident use either of the buildings or even asked you to, right?
It's rare.
I mean, you could have an organizational meeting for Chittenden County Republicans or the Chittenden County Democrats, or
yeah, it could happen. Yeah,
a religious church that's doing a fundraiser and wants to get everybody together to have a meeting, or I'm just throwing out scenarios, but I just think that we have we got a Sandhill shelter for $45 for 3 hours, and it's $10 a table.
Yeah. And so the difference there is Parks and Rec has a way to collect money from people.
Right.
The police department does not have a way to collect that money. We would have to develop a procedure for them to get the money, handle it, and all that. So that's I think part of the reason. And then the other is it's the administration of it. I think is.
So I guess my
challenge.
Yeah, it happens so infrequently that we really haven't factored it in. We could figure out a way to do it. It's just worth it?
Right in the application. Fill out the application. You select which building you want. Mail a check to 81 Main Street for the cost of the building. And if you cancel your reservation within 15 days or 10 days or 5 days or 2 days or 24 hours, you can come to the town office and get your money back. I think that should be universal across the board. I mean, we're paying to turn the lights on, we're paying to put the heat in the building. I know that the building's heated year round anyway, but the lights and.
So you're saying for non-residents, right?
I'm saying for everybody.
So residents are already paying for the lights with their taxes.
I get that.
They're already paying for lights with their taxes.
Right.
So to charge them more for it,
Why are we charging them to use
use a building that belongs to them, I don't think
you're charging them for Sandhill. They already paid to mow the lawns. They already paid for the picnic tables. They paid for the Kwanzaa hut, and you're charging them to use it. What's the difference?
That's a recreation policy, not ours.
But we're setting the fees.
No, we just got the fees from Ally and put them in there.
I guess that's a discussion.
So I don't know. I think there's too much to this, and we talked about it once. It sat for 8 months, and we're bringing it back up. I'd like to table it and bring it back to a future meeting where we have adequate time to discuss it.
You want to talk about fees? There's anything else other than fees?
Fees and
Oh, the number of people.
number of people.
Yeah.
And a little more clarification for the red changed in the top too, where it says campaign events or religious ceremonies, and then it goes on to say they can use it for organizational types of events. I guess there would want to be a definition in there on what's okay and what's not okay.
Every 2 years, Ethan, the political parties
I know
have to
what
reorganize.
happens. I know what happens.
And there was very limited space for them
Right.
to meet anywhere in the town
Right.
to have an organizational meeting. And that was the purpose of changing that.
Yep.
Not to have a regular meeting in any of the buildings, but to at least have a place to organize.
Right. But it says for organizational types of events.
That's right.
That's only for the organizational meeting?
That's right.
Okay, it doesn't say that.
That's what it's.
If I may, it's going to be hard to capture every single possible use that can come up. Somebody said, we want to do a meeting, we want to run through our finances and do an accounting type meeting as part of our annual financial update. Okay, that's a business type of thing, that's an organizational type of thing. You're not campaigning, you're not holding a religious ceremony. Fine, go ahead.
Right.
And it's going to, I think, to some extent, be at the discretion of the manager as to what category it falls under and whether or not to say yes or no.
Right.
To respond to some of the other stuff, I think it's a good point. We can clarify what fire code is and try to look at that. I can plug that in. I don't think you need to delay accepting this for that. That's just a change that we can add and bring back in the next couple of weeks. I think if you do want to have a conversation about charging fees, that is a conversation whether you want to have it tonight or at a different meeting.
True. You could. So yeah. So the other thing I didn't say is this is formalizing something that's already been done. It's been a practice in the past. We've allowed people to use this room for free.
Right.
For years.
We allowed people to use the police department for years.
And
for
so yeah. And
monthly meetings. For
so this is formalizing what happened. My understanding of what happened is that an organization went to the police department, asked if they could use the room, and they were allowed to, and then it turns out that it was against practice. We didn't have a policy that said whether or not you could have somebody there. But in the past, we had not allowed that type of organization to use our facilities, and it was totally up. It was a the difference between a practice is something you do, a policy is something you have documented that tells you how you're going to do it. So we were doing it the other way. So this is formalizing it. So the concept of having of charging for this room and the police department meeting room is a new thing. The way this is, and the other new thing here is allowing political parties and religious organizations to use the facilities for organizational type activities. So those are the two things. We could approve this policy as it is and then have a future discussion about generating revenue around it. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I'm just not satisfied with the wording in the top because, to your point, the example that you're sharing, one group came in and was allowed to use the building, and another group came in and requested.
That was because because there was a miscommunication.
Right. Before that, there was no continuous denial. It was allowed.
There had been
It had never been allowed before.
There had been continuous denial. There was new people who came in. Yes.
Well,
and so what happened, right, is there was a change in management. We no longer had things were in a big amount of flux at that point. Evan left. We had a new police chief. We had new new employees that didn't know what the practice was. Oh, there's a meeting room. Okay. And there was there wasn't anything evil done.
No, I'm not saying anything was evil. I'm just saying
we're
setting ourselves up for discretion again. Because as Greg said, he's gonna be able to say, what the meeting is for. Are they doing their finances? Are we going to allow a monthly meeting for political organizations that aren't campaigning, or is it just a one-time a year reorganizational meeting? That needs to be clear. That can't be a discretion. That needs to be written point blank. We're going to open this up, and if you want to have your monthly meeting, and whether they do it at Sand Hill or wherever and pay the fee or don't pay the fee or use a free building, then allow them to do it. And if we're only going to allow them to use the building once a year for an organizational meeting, then that's it, period.
Would you like organizational or business types of meetings? So, and let me.
Yeah, business works.
And so we get requests occasionally. It's the Chittenden County or the Essex Democrats or Republicans. Sometimes it's homeowners associations from the area who are coming in. They'd have their annual meeting. I would read it and I would interpret it if we say organizational and or business type of meetings and somebody wanted to meet monthly, as long as they're not campaigning and the room is available. Okay.
Okay. I like that.
Organizational and business.
And or business. Yeah. Perfect.
The only edit I was going to suggest is that where you have them sign, maybe put right in there and assume the liability for damages. I know it's mentioned up above in one of the notes, but typically when you sign, it's pretty clear that you are assuming liability for any damages. Just a suggestion.
There is a bullet: user is responsible for the cost of all repairs to the facility required as the result of damage.
Yes.
Is that?
But it's up there. But where they're signing, they're really going to.
Oh, it's on the application.
Something on the application about it. Yeah.
It's worded great for protecting the town and everything, but it should be clear that they're assuming liability for any damages.
Okay, so what I've heard is to add in clarification of organizational and business meeting, request to add something about assuming liability near the signature block. And then Ethan was suggesting a change to fee structure. Do we want
future date?
Do we want to accept the policy as it is today, and then we can have a discussion at some point about
sounds fair.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about a bunch of other fees.
Right.
Coming.
Right.
Hopefully pending approval of the legislature.
Yep.
So this can be added to our list of fee changes.
Okay, so there's a comment from the public.
Good evening. Ken Signorello for the record. I want to remind the board that not for-profit businesses are taxpayers in the town too. And some of them are very small. In-home businesses have no meeting space for meeting clients or making a proposal, something along those lines. I'd like to suggest that for-profit businesses be allowed to have some limited use, very similar to what you've allowed for political and religious organizations. No production, no services provided, strictly meetings. A differential higher than the ones that are in there now. So resident businesses would be higher than the resident people. Non-resident business would be even higher than the non-residential people. Just meetings. No business production. Look at it, consider the small businesses that operate out of their homes, have no meeting place. They, they struggle with that as well, just like political organizations do. Thanks.
Thanks for the comment.
I have a follow-up question based on that. If we had a small business that wanted to throw a summer party for their employees, would we not allow them to use Sandhill space? Because according to in addition, the town does not allow the use of its facilities by for-profit organizations. It would seem as though that would not be allowed to happen.
Probably how I would read it, whether or not that was the intent. We considered it.
Got a draft back here. I'm good.
Yeah. That's an interesting point.
We want everybody's money. Invite them to spend their money with us. Just don't allow them to have a promotion to stop by Essex Town and get a free box of steaks if you come say hi to me. You know what I mean? It has to be like Ken was mentioning, a business, or as Tracy was saying, a barbecue for the employees, not a barbecue for a business to say, hey, come by, we're at Sand Hill today, 3 to 5 or whatever. It's just throwing a party for my kid's birthday, but it's for my employees who are, I could see it. I like it.
So somebody could have an Avon party in here.
what?
An Avon party. Somebody,
Avon party?
Yeah, selling Avon.
We can't sell stuff. That was gonna be put in there. There's no selling of product, no production, no selling. Strictly use.
So would we then rent the space out for people who want to just come in and work on their computer and do their jobs remotely from here? It can go on and on.
If the schedule's open and they want to pay $35.
Sounds like you're getting awful nitpicking about this.
Well, it's I guess you can get pretty nitpicky about it. We don't do anything and we just do what we've been doing. We don't have a policy.
And that's where discretion becomes an issue. You know what I mean?
Well, given the fact that there seems to be a lot more tied up in this than originally thought, I would propose that we put this on a future agenda item and allow more time for discussion. And make you all write down all your proposals how you want to change, because this is when we originally had the discussion. This was the only part that got changed originally.
So right. So the library has a policy to not allow people to come in and work to make money in the library using library Wi-Fi. How far are we going to go?
Yeah, that's.
Does that fit in our equity policy?
I mean, the library's got to be free. You can't. I don't know. And I guess there's all kinds of things could get complicated. Tracy, did you get your hand up?
Part of the confusion around the instances that you're referring to stem from the fact that we did not have a written policy, that it was just practice, that essentially word of mouth, interpretation, discretion. I think that we should go ahead and approve this as is, so that there is something to refer to avoid those situations, but come back and revisit with fees, adding in like potentially, you can't come in here with a Cricut machine and a bunch of craft supplies and actually run a business from here.
And just another layer of complication of it is that this is the only meeting space we have in the town offices, and we don't reserve it all day long. So if it gets to be a popular spot for whatever business or not business people are conducting, and all of a sudden it starts interfering with town operations, that becomes a problem too.
Have to hire staff to manage it all.
Charge high enough fees to do that.
Yes, so.
And we can track and adjust and.
Yeah. So I mean, if you would accept it now and adjust later, I think that's a fine way forward. If you're going to adjust going forward and look at allowing more and more uses or for-profit or other types of uses, I think we should start to consider after hours when the room is not booked, kind of thing.
We also need to make sure we get a legal review.
So call a question or table it.
And you have a hand up in the audience too, online.
Right, Gina, go ahead.
Hi, you guys. I was just wondering if the other thing is space for elected people who have been elected that represent the community, if they could have a space to communicate with the community what they've been doing, not necessarily to campaign, but there seems to be limited space for representatives to meet with the people. They often do, they'll go to the coffee shop or whatever, and that's probably a first go-to place. But I think in the winter in particular, it's pretty limited, and it would just be nice if we could hear from our representatives. I didn't know if that was on your, on your mind or on the list. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Gina. Okay, so what's the pleasure of the select board? Do we want to approve it and revisit, or do we want to rework it before we approve it? with a reminder that these things still happen. They just happen without a policy now. We don't approve it. That's it. Everybody looks worn out.
I made the motion to approve it, so I have to withdraw my motion if that's what you want.
So sorry.
Okay.
To backtrack my brain here. We have a motion to be in a second, and this is our discussion of it.
Yeah, to approve it with saying, organizational and or business types of events. And then Don made the motion and I seconded it.
Okay. I've lost my memory of that. I guess we went on from there. Sorry.
And I can withdraw it if you want to table it.
No, I'm unless I guess so we're accepting it. Is how it was worded. So any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the policy with the edits proposed this evening, the adding in the business and adding in the changing the cannabis, marijuana to cannabis was the other one.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot that one. Adding something about liability near the signature block. You're okay with that? Please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. We will bring it back in our next meeting to adopt it, at which point we can also either have more discussion about it and choose not to adopt, or we can adopt it. So, all right. And right, if possible, we can fill in those fire code numbers.
So if we were to make any changes, it would have to be posted again before it could be adopted.
That's right.
No.
No.
If we made changes?
This is a new policy, so if you're not making major changes to it, we can.
So if we made some minor changes, I'm not talking about the fees, I'm just talking about other wording that was put in there. We made some minor changes and it was presented in a timely manner in the packet, there would still be the option to approve.
Correct. This isn't like a charter change where statute says if you, or an ordinance change, or statute says if you change a word, you have to bring it back. It's a select board policy. This is how you do it. It's part of the rules and regs. This is how you adopt. So if there's a minor change, you have the discretion to say it's a minor change, we approve it, or it's huge, we want to take it back and revisit.
Okay. Next two items are executive session. We'll circle back to those. Consent.
I make the motion, we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. Any discussion? Yes.
I just had I noticed that they said they had a pavement condition index for the pavement and everything. Is that available, or I could just check it out?
I will talk to Aaron and figure out how to get it to you.
I assume they went through and they ranked all the roads poor, very poor, or so. I was just curious to see. I know that you move them around as needed, but I'm just curious to see what our gradient is. Whether we have a lot of very poor or most are very good, or what was all. And I had the same question about the force main. But that was it.
And I wanted to point out that the select board meeting schedule that's in here is the one that we modified at our last meeting, where we moved meetings off of holidays to the following week for the most part, rather than moving them to Tuesday, so they don't conflict with school board meetings. So there were comments that we had done that, especially during our budget season, because there's a lot of holidays in January and February that conflicted with our meetings. So we've adjusted those. The other thing I want to point out is that there's actually two sets of meeting schedules. There's one in the reading file. The one in the reading file includes the special meetings that we've added, the planning commission meeting on the 26th, and then the strategic planning meeting on May 8th that aren't, they're yeah, the ones that's being approved in the consent agenda are the regular meetings that we are required to set at this meeting.
And where is this other schedule?
The other one is in the reading file. It is 8B in the reading file.
Once the schedule's approved for the year, we'll merge them into one future
Okay.
schedule document. And the 27th and the 8th you've approved anyways already.
Okay. That's fine then. I had it on the calendar, but it's
And
okay.
to be clear, both those two added special meetings are 6 o'clock instead of 6:30. All right, any other comments on consent? Okay, all those in favor of approving consent, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Reading file, any comments from anybody?
I would like to thank Tom Ferland for his service on the planning commission.
Thank you, Don. I see Tracy nodding.
Yeah. I also have another.
Go ahead.
I would like to send a sincere thank you to the Essex Police Department, specifically Sergeant John Dunn, Corporal Ryan Sorrell, and Corporal Sabrina Fate. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. My 16-year-old and I took part in the RAD self-defense class in the month of March. It was informative, it was empowering, and Corporal Sorrell and Derek, I did not get his rank or last name, and the department he works for quite literally rolled with our punches, dressed up in red suits, padded suits, for our situation night. So it was definitely well worth the time and much appreciated. I believe there were 15 of us that went through the course.
I just had a comment on the liquor licenses. The regular, they're all current with their fees and permits and taxes and everything owed to the town. Just routine.
Yep. And you'll be seeing probably a whole lot more of them next week or 2 weeks from now.
For clarification on that too, it's just the country club. We're not doing anything with the city. That's just in there for ease of the police department.
Right, because they have to review those, so they're listed in the. We're only approving the town ones, correct?
I missed a couple too.
Yeah, these are the.
Well, there's a huge gap in between them.
All right, so does anyone have the motions for?
I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A3 to include the town manager and deputy manager.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
I forgot to vote, but I was an aye.
Yeah, okay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Do we have another motion?
I move that the select board enter executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A2 and to include the town manager and deputy manager.
Second.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion? I assume we are not coming back with any.
You might.
We might come back with a motion. Okay.
The planning commission.
Oh, right. Right. We're discussing a potential planning commission appointment. Scott, you don't have to wait around for that. No. But we will return to the online meeting. And either say we didn't make a decision or we'll make a decision. Or not, make a motion and then adjourn. So, yeah. I said that all during comment on the second vote. All those in favor of the second motion for executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes 5-0. We'll there and then come back.